Spoon River Anthology by Edgar Lee Masters. For permission to reprint the Spoon River Anthology in book form, I wish to thank William Marion Rady, the editor of Ready's Mirror, where it appeared from week to week, beginning with May 29, 1914, and to express my gratitude to him for the sympathetic interest which he showed in the work from the beginning. The Spooniad, the late Mr. Jonathan Swift Summers, laureate of Spoon River, planned the Spooniad as an epic in 24 books, but unfortunately did not live to complete even the first book. The fragment was found among his papers by William Marion Ready and was for the first time published in Ready's Mirror of December 18, 1914. Of John Cabani's wrath and of the strife of hostile parties, and his dire defeat who led the common people in the cause of freedom for Spoon River, and the fall of Rhodes Bank that brought unnumbered woes and loss to many, with engendered hate that flamed into the torch in Anak hands to burn the cot house, on whose blackened wreck a fairer temple rose and progress stood, sing, muse, that lit the Chian's face with smiles, who saw the ant-like Greeks and Trojans crawl about Scamander, over walls, pursued or else pursuing, and the funeral pyres and sacred hecatombs, and first because of Helen who with Paris fled to Troy as sole mate, and the wrath of Peleus' son, decreed to lose Chryses, lovely spoil of war, and dearest concubine. Say first, thou son of night, called Momus, from whose eyes no secret hides, and Thalia, smiling one, what bred twixt Thomas Rhodes and John Cabani's the deadly strife? His daughter Flossie, she, returning from her wandering with a troop of strolling players, walked the village streets, her bracelets tinkling and with sparkling rings and words of serpent wisdom, and a smile of cunning in her eyes. Then Thomas Rhodes, who ruled the church and ruled the bank as well, made known his disapproval of the maid. And all Spoon River whispered, and the eyes of all the church frowned on her, till she knew they feared her and condemned. But them to flout, she gave a dance to viols and to flutes, brought from Peoria, and many youths, but lately made regenerate through the prayers of zealous preachers and of earnest souls, danced merrily, and sought her in the dance, who wore a dress so low of neck that eyes down straying might survey the snowy swell till it was lost in whiteness. With the dance the village changed to merriment from gloom. The milliner, Mrs. Williams, could not fill her orders for new hats, and every seamstress plied busy needles making gowns. Old trunks and chests were opened for their store of laces, and rings and trinkets were brought out of hiding, and all the youths fastidious grew of dress. Notes passed, and many a fair one's door at eve knew a bouquet, and strolling lovers thronged about the hills that overlooked the river. Then, since the mercy seats more empty showed, one of God's chosen lifted up his voice. The woman of Babylon is among us. Rise, ye sons of light, and drive the wanton forth. So John Cabani's left the church, and left the hosts of law and order with his eyes by anger cleared, and him the liberal cause acclaimed as nominee to the mayoralty to vanquish a deep blood. But as the war waged bitterly, for votes and rumours flew about the bank, and of the heavy loans which Rhodes' son had made to prop his loss in wheat, and many drew their coin and left the bank of Rhodes Maw hollow, with the talk among the liberals of another bank soon to be charted. Lo, the bubble burst mid cries and curses, but the liberals laughed, and in the hall of Nicholas Bindle held wise converse and inspiriting debate. High on a stage that overlooked the chairs where dozens sat, and where a pop-eyed daub of Shakespeare, very like the hired man of Christian Delman, brown and pointed beard, upon a drab proscenium outward stared, sat Harmon Whitney, to that eminence, by merit raised in ribaldry and guile, and to the assembled rebels thus he spake. Whether to lie supine and let a clique cold-blooded, scheming, hungry, singing psalms, devour our substance, wreck our banks, and drain our little hods for hazards on the price of wheat or pork, or yet to cower beneath the shadow of a spire upreared to curb a breed of lackeys, and to serve the bank cogitor in greed, that is the question. Shall we have music and the jocund dance, or tolling bells, or shall young romance roam these hills about the river, flowering now to April's tears, or shall they sit at home, or play croquet where Thomas Rhodes may see, I ask you? If the blood of youth runs awe, and riots gainst this regimen of gloom, shall we submit to have these youths and maids branded as libertines and wantons? Ere his words were done a woman's voice called, No. Then rose a sound of moving chairs, as when the numerous swine o'errun the replenished troughs, and every head was turned, as when a flock of geese back-turning to the hunter's tread rise up with flapping wings. Then rang the hall with riotous laughter, for with battered hat tilted upon her saucy head, and fist raised in defiance, Daisy Frasa stood. Headlong she had been hurled from out the hall save Wendell Bloyd, who spoke for woman's rights, prevented, and the bellowing voice of Burchard. Then mid-applause she hastened toward the stage and flung both gold and silver to the cause and swiftly left the hall. Meantime up stood a giant figure, bearded like the son of Alcmene, deep-chested, round of paunch, and spoke in thunder. Over there behold a man who for the truth withstood his wife, such is our spirit. When that blood compelled me to remove Dom Pedro. Quick before Jim Brown could finish, Jefferson Howard obtained the flaw and spake. Ill suits the time for clownish words, and trivial is our cause if naught's at stake but John Cabani's wrath, he who was erstwhile of the other side and came to us for vengeance. More's at stake than triumph for New England or Virginia. And whether rum be sold, or for 2 years as in the past 2 years, this town be dry matters but little, oh yes, revenue for sidewalks, sewers, that is well enough. I wish to God this fight were now inspired by other passion than to salve the pride of John Cabanis or his daughter. Why can never contests of great moment spring from worthy things, not little? Still, if men must always act so, and if rum must be the symbol and the medium to release from life's denial, and from slavery, then give me rum. Exultant cries arose. Then, as George Trimble had overcome his fear and vacillation and begun to speak, the door creaked and the idiot, Willie Metcalf, breathless and hatless, whiter than a sheet, entered and cried, "The marshal's on his way to arrest you all. And if you only knew who's coming here tomorrow. I was listening beneath the window where the other side are making plans." So to a smaller room to hear the idiot's secret some withdrew selected by the chair himself and Jefferson Howard, Benjamin Pantia, and Wendell Bloyd, George Trimble, Adam Weirach, Emmanuel Ehrenhot, Seth Compton, Godwin James and Enoch Dunlap, Hiram Skates, Roy Butler, Carl Hamblin, Roger Heston, Ernest Hyde and Pennywit, the artist, Kinsey Keene and E.C. Culbertson and Franklin Jones, Benjamin Fraser, son of Benjamin Pantia by Daisy Fraser, some of lesser note, and secretly conferred. But in the hall disorder reigned, and when the marshal came and found it so, he marched the hoodlums out and locked them up. Meanwhile, within a room back in the basement of the church, with blood counseled the wisest heads. Judge Summers first, deep learned in life, and next him, Eliot Hawkins and Lambert Hutchins. Next him, Thomas Rhodes and Editor Whedon. Next him, Garrison Standard, a traitor to the Liberals, who with lip upcurled in scorn and with a bitter sneer. Such strife about an insult to a woman, a girl of 18, Christian Dalman too, and others unrecorded. Some there were who frowned not on the cup, but loathed the rule democracy achieved thereby, the freedom and lust of life it symbolized. Now Mon with snowy fingers up the sky flung like an orange at a festival the ruddy sun, when from their hasty beds pawed forth the hostile fosses, and the streets resounded to the rattle of the wheels, that drove this way and that to gather in the toddy voters, and the cries of chieftains who manned the battle. But at 10 o'clock, the Liberals bellowed fraud, and at the polls the rival candidates growled and came to blows. Then proved the idiot's tale of yestereve a word of warning. Suddenly on the streets walked hog-eyed Allen, terror of the hills that looked on Bernadotte 10 miles removed. No man of this degenerate day could lift the boulders which he threw, and when he spoke the windows rattled, and beneath his brows, thatched like a shed with bristling hair of black, his small eyes glistened like a maddened boar. And as he walked the boards creaked, as he walked a song of menace rumbled. Thus he came, the champion of a blood, commissioned to terrify the Liberals. Many fled as when a hawk saws o'er the chicken yard. He passed the polls and with a playful hand touched Brown, the giant, and he fell against, as though he were a child, the wall, so strong was hog-eyed Allen. But the Liberals smiled. For soon as hog-eyed Allen reached the walk, close on his steps paced Bengal Mike, brought in by Kinsey Keene, the subtle-witted one, to match the hog-eyed Allen. He was scarce 3/4 the other's bulk, but steel his arms and with a tiger's heart. 2 men he killed and many wounded in the days before, and no one feared. But when the hog-eyed one saw Bengal Mike his countenance grew dark, the bristles o'er his red eyes twitched with rage, the song he rumbled lowered. Round and round the cot-house paced he, followed stealthily by Bengal Mike, who jeered him every step. "Come, elephant, and fight? Come, hog-eyed coward, come, face about and fight me, lumbering sneak. Come, beefy bully, hit me if you can. Take out your gun, you duffer, give me reason to draw and kill you. Take your billy out. I'll crack your baw's head with a piece of brick." But never a word the hog-eyed one returned, but trod about the cot-house, followed both by troops of boys and watched by all the men. All day they walked the square. But when Apollo stood with reluctant look above the hills as fain to see the end, and all the votes were cast, and closed the polls, before the door of Trainer's Drug Star Bengal Mike, in tones that echoed through the village, bawled the taunt, "Who was your mother, hog-eyed?" In a trice, as when a wild boar turns upon the hound that through the brakes upon an August day has gashed him with its teeth, the hog-eyed one rushed with his giant arms on Bengal Mike, and grabbed him by the throat. Then rose to heaven the frightened cries of boys, and yells of men forth rushing to the street. And Bengal Mike moved this way and now that, drew in his head as if his neck to shorten, and bent down to break the death grip of the hog-eyed one, twixt guttural wrath and fast-expiring strength striking his fists against the invulnerable chest of hog-eyed Allen. Then, when some came in to pot them, others stayed them, and the fight spread among dozens. Many valiant souls went down from clubs and bricks. But tell me, Muse, what god or goddess rescued Bengal Mike? With one last, mighty struggle did he grasp the murderous hands and turning kick his foe. Then, as if struck by lightning, vanished all the strength from hog-eyed Allen. At his side sank limp those giant arms, and awe his face dread pallor, and the sweat of anguish spread. And those great knees, invincible but late, shook to his weight. And quickly as the lion leaps on its wounded prey, did Bengal Mike smite with a ruck the temple of his foe, and down he sank, and darkness awe his eyes passed like a cloud. As when the woodman fells some giant oak upon a summer's day, and all the songsters of the forest shrill, and one great hawk that has his nestling young amid the topmost branches croaks, as crash the leafy branches through the tangled boughs of brother oaks, so fell the hog-eyed one amid the lamentations of the friends of a blood. Just then, 4 lusty men bar the town marshal, on whose iron face the purple pall of death already lay, to Trainer's Drug Store, shot by Jack Maguire. And cries went up of "Lynch him?" And the sound of running feet from every side was heard bent on the Spoon River Anthology by Edgar Lee Masters. Uncopyright may you do good and not evil. May you find forgiveness for yourself and forgive others. May you share freely, never taking more than you give. Copyright pages exist to tell you that you can't do something. Unlike them, this uncopyright page exists to tell you that the writing and artwork in this ebook are believed to be in the United States public domain. That is, they are believed to be free of copyright restrictions in the United States. The United States public domain represents our collective cultural heritage, and items in it are free for anyone in the United States to do almost anything at all with, without having to get permission. Copyright laws are different all over the world, and the source text or artwork in this ebook may still be copyrighted in other countries. If you're not located in the United States, you must check your local laws before using this ebook. Standard ebooks makes no representations regarding the copyright status of the source text or artwork in this ebook in any country other than the United States. Non-authorship activities performed on items that are in the public domain, so-called sweat of the brow work, don't create a new copyright. That means that nobody can claim a new copyright on an item that is in the public domain for, among other things, work like digitization, mock-up, or typography. Regardless, the contributors to this ebook released their contributions under the terms in the CC 01.0 Universal Public Domain dedication, thus dedicating to the worldwide public domain all of the work they've done on this ebook, including but not limited to metadata, the title page, imprint, colophon, this uncopyright, and any changes or enhancements to, or mock-up on, the original text and artwork. This dedication doesn't change the copyright status of the source text or artwork. We make this dedication in the interest of enriching our global cultural heritage, to promote free and libre culture around the world, and to give back to the unrestricted culture that has given all of us so much. Table of Contents Landmarks, Colophon Spoon River Anthology, was published in 1916 by Edgar Lee Masters. This ebook was produced for Standard eBooks by Brad Taylor, and is based on a transcription produced in 2007 by an anonymous volunteer for Spoon River Anthology Net, and on digital scans from the Internet Archive. The cover page is adapted from Ghost Dance, The Vision of Life, a painting completed in 1897 by Ralph Albert Blakelock. The cover and title pages feature the League Spartan and Sots Mill Gaudy typefaces created in 2014 and 2009 by the League of Movable Type. This edition was released on August 18, 2025, 9:05 p.m., and is based on revision 718,768F. The first edition of this ebook was released on August 20, 2022, 6:26 p.m. You can check for updates to this ebook, view its revision history, or download it for different e-reading systems at standardbooksog/ebooks/edgalimasters/Spoon River Anthology. The volunteer-driven Standard eBooks project relies on readers like you to submit typos, corrections, and other improvements. Anyone can contribute at Standard Booksog. To my wife, in notes author of the Spooniad, right see Jonathan Swift Summers, right? Epilogue The Graveyard of Spoon River. Two voices are heard behind a screen decorated with diabolical and angelic figures in various allegorical relations. A faint light shows dimly through the screen as if it were woven of leaves, branches, and shadows. Your dreaming worlds. I'm in the king row. Move as you will. If I can't wreck you, I'll thwart you, harry you, rout you, check you. I'm tired. I'll send for my son to play. I think he can beat you finally. Very well, my lord. But I beg to mention I'll give this game my direct attention. Beaten, you walk away with a jest. I strike the table, I scatter the checkers. Aha! You armies and iron deckers, races and states in a cataclysm now for a day of atheism? I made it rough in a game of checkers. No doubt. I made the checkers rattle, turning the table over and strewing the bits of wood like an army pursuing. Out of the dust, out of the slime, a little rust and a little lime. Muscle and gristle, mucin, stone braid with a pestle, fat and bone. Out of the marshes, out of the vaults, matter crushes gas and salts. What is this you call a mind, flitting, drifting, pale and blind, soul of the swamp that rides the wind? Jack-o'-lantern, here you are. Dream of heaven, pine for a star, chase your brothers to and fro, back to the swamp at last you'll go. Hillu, hillu, old one, old one. Now ere I break you, crush you, and make you clay for my use. Let me observe you. You were a bold one, flat at the dome of you, heavy the base of you, false to the home of you, strong was the face of you, strange to all fears. Yet did the hair of you hide what you were. Now to renerve you, now you are dust, limestone, and rust. I mold and I stir and make you again. Now for the breath of life. As I remember, you have done right to mold your creatures first and stand them up. From gravitation I make the will. Out of sensation comes his ill. Out of my mirror springs his error. Who was so cruel to make him the slave of me, the sorceress, you the knave, and you the plotter to catch his thought. Whatever he did, whatever he sought, with a nature dual of will and mind, a thing that sees and a thing that's blind, come to our dance? Something hated him, made us over him, therefore fated him. Passion, reason, custom, rules. Creeds of the churches, lore of the schools, taint in the blood and strength of soul. Flesh too weak for the will's control. Poverty, riches, pride of birth, wailing, laughter over the earth. Here I have you caught again, enter my web, ye sons of men. Look in my mirror, isn't it real? What do you think now, what do you feel? Here is treasure of gold heaped up, here is wine in the festal cup. Tendrils blossoming, turn to whips, love with her breasts and scarlet lips. Breathe in their nostrils. Falsehood's breath, out of nothingness into death. Out of the mold, out of the rocks. Wonder, mockery, paradox, soaring spirit, groveling flesh, bait the trap and spread the mesh. Give him hunger, lure him with truth, give him the iris hopes of youth. Starve him, shame him, fling him down, whirled in the vortex of the town. Break him, age him, till he curse the idiot face of the universe. Over and over we mix the clay. What was dust is alive today. Waving his trumpet, you live, away, how strange and new, I am I, and another too. I was a sundew's leaf, but now what is this longing? Earth below I was a seedling magnet tipped drawn down earth, and I was gripped electrons in a granite stone, now I think. My lips to thine. Through thee I find something alone by love divined, begun? No, wait, I have bethought me, friends, let's give a play. To yonder green rooms go. Oh yes, a play? That's very well, I think, but who will be the audience? I must throw illusion over all. And I must shift the scenery, and tangle up the plot. Well, so you shall. Our audience shall come from yonder graves. A terrific blast of the trumpet. Whoa, be quiet, if you please, at least until the stars fall and the moon. Ladies and gentlemen, your kind attention to my interpretation of the scene. I rise to give your fancy comprehension and analyze the pots of the machine. My mood is such that I would not deceive you, though still a liar and the father of it. From judgment's frailty I would retrieve you, though falsehood is my art and though I love it. Down in the habitations whence I rise, the roots of human sorrow boundless spread. Long have I watched them draw the strength that lies in clay made richer by the rotting dead. Here is a blossom, here a twisted stalk, here fruit that sourly withers ere its prime, and here a growth that sprawls across the walk, food for the green worm, which it turns to slime. The ruddy apple with a core of cock springs from a root which in a hollow dangles. Not skillful husbandry nor laborious work can save the tree which lightning breaks and tangles. Why does the bright nasturtium scarcely flower, but that those insects multiply and grow, which make it food, and in the very hour in which the veined leaves and blossoms blow? Why does a goodly tree, while fast maturing, turn crooked branches covered all with scale? Why does the tree whose youth was not assuring prosper and bear while all its fellows fail? I under earth see much. I know the soil. I know where mold is heavy and where thin. I see the stones that thwart the plowman's toil, the crooked roots of what the priests call sin. I know all secrets, even to the caw, what seedlings will be upas, pine, or laurel. It cannot change howe'er the fields worked awe. Man's what he is, and that's the devil's moral. So with the souls of the ensuing drama, they sprang from certain seed in certain earth. Behold them in the devil's cyclorama, shown in their proper light for all they are worth. Now to my task. I'll give an exhibition of mixing the ingredients of spirit. Come, crucible, perform your magic mission. Come, recreative fire, and hover near it. I'll make a soul, or show how one is made. This is the woman you shall see anon. This hectic flame makes all the world afraid. It was a soldier's scourge which ate the bone. His daughter bore the lady of the action, and died at 39 of scrofula. She was a creature of a sweet attraction, whose sex obsession no one ever saw. Lo, this denotes aristocratic strains back in the centuries of France's glory, and this the will that pulls against the chains her father strove until his hair was hoary. Sorrow and failure made his nature cold. He never loved the child whose woe is shown, and hence her passion for the things which gold brings in this world of pride, and brings alone. The human heart that's famished from its birth turns to the grosser treasures, that is plain. Thus aspiration fallen fills the earth with jungle growths of bitterness and pain. Of Celtic, Gallic fire our heroine, courageous, cruel, passionate and proud, false, vengeful, cunning, without fear o' sin. A head that oft is bloody, but not bowed. Now if she meet a man, suppose our hero, with whom her chemistry shall wa yet mix, as if she were her Baja to his Nero, 'twill look like one of Satan's little tricks. However it must be. The world's great garden is not all mine. I only sow the tares. Wheat should be made immune, or else the warden should stop their coming in the world's affairs. But to our hero? Long ere he was born I knew what would repel him and attract. Such spirit mathematics, fig or thorn, I can prognosticate before the fact. This is a grandsire's treason in an orchard against a maid whose nature with his mated. And this his memory distraight and tortured, which mocked the child with hate because she hated. Our heroine's grand dame was that maid's own cousin, but never this our man and woman knew. The child in time of lovers had a dozen, then wed a gentleman upright and true. And thus our hero had a double nature. One half of him was bad, the other good. The devil must exhaust his nomenclature to make this puzzle rightly understood. But when our hero and our heroine met they were at once attracted. The repulsion was hidden under passion, with her net which must enmesh you ere you feel revulsion. The virus coursing in the soldier's blood, the orchard's ghost, the unknown kinship twixt them, our hero's mother's lovers round them stood, shadows that smiled to see how fate had fixed them. This twain pledge vows and marry, that's the play. And then the tragic features rise and deepen. He is a tender husband. When away the serpents from the orchard slyly creep in. Our heroine, born of spirit none too loyal, picks fruit of knowledge, leaves the tree of life. Her fancy turns to France corrupt and royal, soon she forgets her duty as a wife. You know the rest, so far as that's concerned, she met exposure and her husband slew her. He lost his reason, for the love she spurned. He prized her as his own, how slight he knew her. Now here he sits condemned to mount the gallows. He could not tell his story, he is dumb. Love, says your poets, is a grace that hallows, I call it suffering and martyrdom. The judge with pointed finger says, you killed her. Well, so he did, but here's the explanation, he could not give it. I, the drama builder, show you the various truths and their relation. Now, to begin, the curtain is ascending, they meet at tea upon a flowery lawn. Fair, is it not? How sweet their souls are blending. The author calls the play Laocoon, with which we are done. A flash of a comet upon the earth stream. A dream twice removed, a spectral confusion of earth's dread illusion. These are the ghosts from the desolate coasts. Would you go to them? Only pursue them. Whatever enshrined is within you is you. In a place where no wind is, out of the damps, be ye as lamps. Flame like aspire, to me alone true, the life and the fire. The springtime is come, the winter departed, she wakens from slumber and dances light-hearted. The sun is returning. We are done with alarms, earth lifts her face burning, held close in his arms. The sun is an eagle who broods o'er his young, The earth is his nursling in whom he has flung the life flame and seed, in blossom desire, till fire become life, and life become fire. I slip and I vanish, I baffle your eye. I dive and I climb, I change and I fly. You have me, you lose me, who have me too well. Now find me and use me, I am here in a cell. You are there in a cell. Oh, now for a rod with which to divine you. When the waking waters rise from their beds of snow, under the hill, in little rooms of stone where they sleep when icicles rain, the April breezes scurry through woodlands, saying, fulfill? Awaken roots under cover of soil, it is spring again. Then the sun exults, the moon is at peace, and voices call to the silver shadows to lift the flowers from their dreams. And a longing enters my heart of sorrow, my heart that rejoices in the fleeting glimpse of a shining face, and her hair that gleams. I arise and follow alone for hours the winding way by the river, hunting a vanishing light, and a solace for joy too deep. Where do you lead me, wild one, on and on forever? Over the hill, and down to the meadows of sleep. Over the soundless depths of space for 100 million miles speeds the soul of me, silent thunder, struck from a hop of fire. Before my eyes the planets wheel and a universe defiles, I but a luminant speck of dust upborne in a vast desire. What is my universe that obeys me, myself compelled to obey a power that holds me and whirls me over a path that has no end? And there are my children who call me great, the giver of life and day, myself a child who cry for life and know not whither I tend. A million suns above me, as if the curtain of night were hung before creation's flame, that shone through the weave of the cloth, each with its worlds and worlds and worlds crying upward for light, for each is drawn in its cost to what? As the candle draws the moth. Orbits unending, life never-ending, power without end. Wouldst thou be laud, not peace but a sod? Not heart's desire, ever aspire. Worship thy power, conquer thy hour, sleep not but strive, so shalt thou live. Infinite law, infinite life. Spoon River Anthology. Imprint this ebook is the product of many hours of hard work by volunteers for Standard eBooks, and builds on the hard work of other literature lovers made possible by the public domain. This particular ebook is based on a transcription from Spoon River Anthology Net and on digital scans from the Internet Archive. The source text and artwork in this ebook are believed to be in the United States public domain. That is, they are believed to be free of copyright restrictions in the United States. They may still be copyrighted in other countries, so users located outside of the United States must check their local laws before using this ebook. The creators of, and contributors to, this ebook dedicate their contributions to the worldwide public domain via the terms in the CC 01.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication. For full license information, see the uncopyright at the end of this ebook. Standard eBooks is a volunteer-driven project that produces ebook editions of public domain literature using modern typography, technology, and editorial standards, and distributes them free of cost. You can download this and other ebooks carefully produced for true book lovers at Standard Books.org. Hod Putt here I lie close to the grave of old Bill Pearsall, who grew rich trading with the Indians, and who afterwards took the bankrupt law and emerged from it richer than ever myself, grown tired of toil and poverty, and beholding how old Bill and other grew in wealth, robbed a traveler one night near Proctor's Grove, killing him unwittingly while doing so, for which I was tried and hanged. That was my way of going into bankruptcy. Now we who took the bankrupt law in our respective ways sleep peacefully side by side. Ollie McGee, have you seen walking through the village a man with downcast eyes and haggard face? That is my husband who, by secret cruelty never to be told, robbed me of my youth and my beauty, till at last, wrinkled and with yellow teeth, and with broken pride and shameful humility, I sank into the grave. But what think you gnaws at my husband's heart? The face of what I was, the face of what he made me. These are driving him to the place where I lie. In death, therefore, I am avenged. Fletcher McGee, she took my strength by minutes, she took my life by hours, she drained me like a fevered moon that saps the spinning world. The days went by like shadows, the minutes wheeled like stars. She took the pity from my heart and made it into smiles. She was a hunk of sculptor's clay. My secret thoughts were fingers. They flew behind her pensive brow and lined it deep with pain. They set the lips and sagged the cheeks and drooped the eye with sorrow. My soul had entered in the clay, fighting like 7 devils. It was not mine, it was not hers, she held it, but its struggles modeled a face she hated, and a face I feared to see. I beat the windows, shook the bolts. I hid me in a corner, and then she died and hunted me for life. Robert Fulton Tanner, if a man could bite the giant hand that catches and destroys him, as I was bitten by a rat while demonstrating my patent trap in my hardware store that day. But a man can never avenge himself on the monstrous ogre life. You enter the room, that's being born, and then you must live, work out your soul, aha. The bait that you crave is in view. A woman with money you want to marry, prestige, place, or power in the world. But there's work to do and things to conquer. Oh yes, the wires that screen the bait. At last you get in. But you hear a step. The ogre, life, comes into the room. He was waiting and heard the clang of the spring, to watch you nibble the wondrous cheese and stare with his burning eyes at you, and scowl and laugh and mock and curse you, running up and down in the trap, until your misery bars him. Cassius Hufa, they have chiseled on my stone the words. His life was gentle, and the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say to all the world, this was a man. Those who knew me smile as they read this empty rhetoric. My epitaph should have been, life was not gentle to him, and the elements so mixed in him that he made warfare on life in the which he was slain. While I lived, I could not cope with slanderous tongues. Now that I am dead, I must submit to an epitaph graven by a fool. Sarepta Mason, my life's blossom, might have bloomed on all sides save for a bitter wind, which stunted my petals on the side of me, which you in the village could see. From the dust, I lift a voice of protest. My flowering side you never saw. Ye living ones, ye are fools indeed, who do not know the ways of the wind and the unseen forces that govern the processes of life. Amanda Baca Henry got me with child, knowing that I could not bring forth life without losing my own. In my youth, therefore, I entered the portals of dust. Traveler, it is believed in the village where I lived that Henry loved me with a husband's love, but I proclaim from the dust that he slew me to gratify his hatred. Constance Hately, you praise my self-sacrifice, Spoon River, in rearing Irene and Mary, orphans of my older sister, and you censure Irene and Mary for their contempt for me, but praise not my self-sacrifice, and censure not their contempt. I reared them. I cared for them, true enough, but I poisoned my benefactions with constant reminders of their dependence. Chase Henry in life, I was the town drunkard. When I died, the priest denied me burial in holy ground, the which redounded to my good fortune. For the Protestants bought this lot, and buried my body here, close to the grave of the banker Nicholas, and of his wife Priscilla. Take note, ye prudent and pious souls, of the cross-currents in life which bring honor to the dead, who lived in shame. Harry Carey, Goodhue, you never marveled, dullards of Spoon River, when Chase Henry voted against the saloons to revenge himself for being shut off. But none of you was keen enough to follow my steps, or trace me home as Chase's spiritual brother. Do you remember when I fought the bank and the courthouse ring for pocketing the interest on public funds, and when I fought our leading citizens for making the poor the packhorses of the taxes, and when I fought the waterworks for stealing streets and raising rates, and when I fought the businessmen who fought me in these fights? Then do you remember that staggering up from the wreck of defeat and the wreck of a ruined career, I slipped from my cloak my lost ideal, hidden from all eyes until then, like the cherished jawbone of an ass, and smote the bank and the waterworks, and the businessmen with prohibition, and made Spoon River pay the cost of the fights that I had lost. Judge Summers, how does it happen, tell me, that I who was most erudite of lawyers, who knew Blackstone and Coke almost by heart, who made the greatest speech the courthouse ever heard, and wrote a brief that won the praise of Justice Breese, how does it happen, tell me, that I lie here unmocked, forgotten, while Chase Henry, the town drunkard, has a marble block, topped by an urn wherein nature, in a mood ironical, has sown a flowering weed? Kinsey Keen, your attention. Thomas Rhodes, president of the bank, Coolbaugh Wedon, editor of the Argus, Rev. Pete, pastor of the leading church, A.D. Blood, several times mayor of Spoon River, and finally all of you, members of the Social Purity Club. Your attention to Cambronne's dying words, standing with the heroic remnant of Napoleon's guard on Mount St. Jean at the battlefield of Waterloo, when Maitland, the Englishman, called to them. Surrender, brave Frenchmen. There at close of day with the battle hopelessly lost, and hordes of men, no longer the army of the great Napoleon, streamed from the field like ragged strips of thunder clouds in the storm. Well, what Cambronne said to Maitland ere the English fire made smooth the brow of the hill against the sinking light of day, say I to you, and all of you, and to you, O world. And I charge you to carve it upon my stone. Benjamin Pantia, together in this grave lie Benjamin Pantia, attorney at law, and Nig, his dog, constant companion, solace and friend. Down the grey road, friends, children, men and women, passing one by one out of life, left me till I was alone with Nig for partner, bedfellow, comrade in drink. In the morning of life I knew aspiration and saw glory, then she, who survives me, snared my soul with a snare which bled me to death, till I, once strong of will, lay broken, indifferent, living with Nig in a room back of a dingy office. Under my jawbone is snuggled the bony nose of Nig. Our story is lost in silence. Go by, mad world. Mrs. Benjamin Pantier, I know that he told that I snared his soul with a snare which bled him to death, and all the men loved him, and most of the women pitied him. But suppose you are really a lady, and have delicate tastes, and loathe the smell of whiskey and onions, and the rhythm of Wordsworth's ode runs in your ears, while he goes about from morning till night repeating bits of that common thing. Oh, why should the spirit of mortal be proud? And then, suppose you are a woman well endowed, and the only man with whom the law and morality permit you to have the marital relation is the very man that fills you with disgust every time you think of it, while you think of it every time you see him. That's why I drove him away from home to live with his dog in a dingy room back of his office. Reuben Pantia, well, Emily Sparks, your prayers were not wasted, your love was not all in vain. I owe whatever I was in life to your hope that would not give me up, to your love that saw me still as good. Dear Emily Sparks, let me tell you the story. I passed the effect of my father and mother. The milliner's daughter made me trouble, and out I went in the world, where I passed through every peril known of wine and women and joy of life. One night, in a room in the Rue de Rivoli, I was drinking wine with a black-eyed cocotte, and the tears swam into my eyes. She thought they were amorous tears and smiled for thought of her conquest over me. But my soul was 3,000 miles away, in the days when you taught me in Spoon River. And just because you no more could love me, nor pray for me, nor write me letters, the eternal silence of you spoke instead. And the black-eyed cocotte took the tears for hers, as well as the deceiving kisses I gave her. Somehow, from that hour, I had a new vision. Dear Emily Sparks. Emily Sparks, where is my boy, in what far part of the world? The boy I loved best of all in the school? I, the teacher, the old maid, the virgin heart, who made them all my children. Did I know my boy aright, thinking of him as a spirit aflame, active, ever aspiring? Oh, boy, for whom I prayed and prayed in many a watchful hour at night, do you remember the letter I wrote you of the beautiful love of Christ? And whether you ever took it or not, my boy, wherever you are, work for your soul's sake, that all the clay of you, all of the dross of you, may yield to the fire of you, till the fire is nothing but light. Nothing but light? Traina, the druggist, only the chemist can tell, and not always the chemist, what will result from compounding fluids or solids. And who can tell how men and women will interact on each other, or what children will result? There were Benjamin Pantia and his wife, good in themselves, but evil toward each other. He oxygen, she hydrogen, their son, a devastating fire. I Traina, the druggist, a miser of chemicals, killed while making an experiment, lived unwedded. Daisy Fraser, did you ever hear of Editor Wedden giving to the public treasury any of the money he received for supporting candidates for office? Or for writing up the canning factory to get people to invest? Or for suppressing the facts about the bank when it was rotten and ready to break? Did you ever hear of the circuit judge helping anyone except the Q Railroad or the bankers? Or did Pete or Rev. Sibley give any part of their salary, earned by keeping still, or speaking out as the leaders wished them to do, to the building of the waterworks? But I, Daisy Fraser, who always passed along the street through rows of nods and smiles, and coughs and words such as "there she goes," never was taken before justice on it without contributing $10 and costs to the school fund of Spoon River. Benjamin Fraser, their spirits beat upon mine like the wings of 1,000 butterflies. I closed my eyes and felt their spirits vibrating. I closed my eyes, yet I knew when their lashes fringed their cheeks from downcast eyes, and when they turned their heads, and when their garments clung to them, or fell from them, in exquisite draperies. Their spirits watched my ecstasy with wide looks of starry unconcern. Their spirits looked upon my tacha, they drank it as it were the water of life. With reddened cheeks, brightened eyes, the rising flame of my soul made their spirits gilt, like the wings of a butterfly drifting suddenly into sunlight. And they cried to me for life, life, life. But in taking life for myself, in seizing and crushing their souls, as a child crushes grapes and drinks from its palms the purple juice, I came to this wingless void, where neither red, nor gold, nor wine, nor the rhythm of life is known. Minerva Jones, I am Minerva, the village poetess, hooted at, jeered at by the yahoos of the street for my heavy body, cockeye, and rolling walk, and all the more when, Butch, Weldy captured me after a brutal hunt. He left me to my fate with Dr. Mayers, and I sank into death, growing numb from the feet up, like one stepping deeper and deeper into a stream of ice. Will someone go to the village newspaper and gather into a book the verses I wrote? I thirsted so for love, I hungered so for life. Indignation, Jones, you would not believe, would you, that I came from good Welsh stock, that I was purer-blooded than the white trash here, and of more direct lineage than the New Englanders and Virginians of Spoon River? You would not believe that I had been to school and read some books. You saw me only as a run-down man, with matted hair and beard and ragged clothes. Sometimes a man's life turns into a cancer from being bruised and continually bruised, and swells into a purplish mass, like growths on stalks of corn. Here was I, a carpenter, mired in a bog of life into which I walked, thinking it was a meadow, with a slattern for a wife, and poor Minerva, my daughter, whom you tormented and drove to death. So I crept, like a snail through the days of my life. No more you hear my footsteps in the morning, resounding on the hollow sidewalk, going to the grocery store for a little corn meal and a nickel's worth of bacon. Dr. Mayer's no other man, unless it was Doc Hill, did more for people in this town than I. And all the weak, the halt, the improvident, and those who could not pay flocked to me. I was good-hearted, easy Dr. Mayers. I was healthy, happy, in comfortable fortune, blessed with a congenial mate, my children raised, all wedded, doing well in the world. And then one night Minerva, the poetess, came to me in her trouble, crying. I tried to help her out. She died. They indicted me, the newspapers disgraced me, my wife perished of a broken heart, and pneumonia finished me. Mrs. Mayers, he protested all his life long the newspapers lied about him villainously, that he was not at fault for Minerva's fall, but only tried to help her. Poor soul, so sunk in sin, he could not see that even trying to help her, as he called it, he had broken the law human and divine. Passers-by, an ancient admonition to you. If your ways would be ways of pleasantness, and all your pathways peace, love God and keep his commandments. Butch Weldy, after I got religion and steadied down, they gave me a job in the canning works, and every morning I had to fill the tank in the yard with gasoline that fed the blow-fires in the sheds to heat the soldering irons, and I mounted a rickety ladder to do it, carrying buckets full of the stuff. One morning, as I stood there pouring, the air grew still and seemed to heave, and I shot up as the tank exploded, and down I came with both legs broken, and my eyes burned crisp as a couple of eggs. For someone left a blow fire going, and something sucked the flame in the tank. The circuit judge said whoever did it was a fellow servant of mine, and so Old Rhode's son didn't have to pay me. And I sat on the witness stand as blind as Jack the Fiddler, saying over and over, I didn't know him at all. Nolt Hohamer, I was the first fruits of the Battle of Missionary Ridge. When I felt the bullet enter my heart, I wished I had stayed at home and gone to jail for stealing the hogs of Curl Treenery, instead of running away and joining the army. Rather 1,000 times the county jail than to lie under this marble figure with wings, and this granite pedestal bearing the words, Pro Patria. What do they mean, anyway? Lydia Puckett Nolt Hohamer ran away to the war the day before Curl Treenery swore out a warrant through Justice on it for stealing hogs. But that's not the reason he turned a soldier. He caught me running with Lucius Atherton. We quarreled, and I told him never again to cross my path. Then he stole the hogs and went to the war. Back of every soldier is a woman. Frank Drummer out of a cell into this darkened space. The end at 25. My tongue could not speak what stirred within me, and the village thought me a fool. Yet at the start, there was a clear vision, a high and urgent purpose in my soul, which drove me on trying to memorize the Encyclopedia Britannica. Herr Drummer, do the boys and girls still go to Sivas for cider, after school, in late September, or gather hazel nuts among the thickets on Aaron Hatfield's farm when the frosts begin? For many times with the laughing girls and boys played I along the road and over the hills when the sun was low and the air was cool, stopping to club the walnut tree standing leafless against a flaming west. Now, the smell of the autumn smoke, and the dropping acorns, and the echoes about the vales bring dreams of life. They hover over me. They question me. Where are those laughing comrades? How many are with me? How many in the old orchards along the way to Sivas, and in the woods that overlook the quiet water? Conrad Siva not in that wasted garden, where bodies are drawn into grass that feeds no flocks, and into evergreens that bear no fruit. There where along the shaded walks vain sighs are heard, and vainer dreams are dreamed of close communion with departed souls. But here under the apple tree I loved and watched and pruned with gnarled hands in the long years, here under the roots of this northern spy to move in the chemic change and circle of life, into the soil and into the flesh of the tree, and into the living epitaphs of redder apples. Dock Hill, I went up and down the streets here and there by day and night, through all hours of the night caring for the poor who were sick. Do you know why? My wife hated me, my son went to the dogs. And I turned to the people and poured out my love to them. Sweet it was to see the crowds about the lawns on the day of my funeral, and hear them murmur their love and sorrow. But oh, dear God, my soul trembled, scarcely able to hold to the railing of the new life when I saw Em Stanton behind the oak tree at the grave, hiding herself and her grief. Andy the night watch in my Spanish cloak and old slouch hat and overshoes of felt, and Tyke, my faithful dog, and my knotted hickory cane. I slipped about with a bull's-eye lantern from door to door on the square, as the midnight stars wheeled round, and the bell in the steeple murmured from the blowing of the wind, and the weary steps of old Dock Hill sounded like one who walks in sleep, and a far-off rooster crew. And now another is watching Spoon River as others watched before me. And here we lie, Dock Hill and I where none breaks through and steals, and no eye needs to guard. Sarah Brown Morris, weep not, I am not here under this pine tree. The balmy air of spring whispers through the sweet grass, the stars sparkle, the whippoorwill calls, but thou grievest, while my soul lies rapturous in the blessed nirvana of eternal light. Go to the good heart that is my husband, who broods upon what he calls our guilty love. Tell him that my love for you, no less than my love for him, wrought out my destiny, that through the flesh I won spirit, and through spirit, peace. There is no marriage in heaven, but there is love. Percy Bysshe Shelley, my father, who owned the wagon shop and grew rich shoeing horses, sent me to the University of Montreal. I learned nothing and returned home, roaming the fields with Bert Kessler, hunting quail and snipe. At Thompson's Lake, the trigger of my gun caught in the side of the boat, and a great hole was shot through my heart. Over me, a fond father erected this marble shaft, on which stands the figure of a woman carved by an Italian artist. They say the ashes of my namesake were scattered near the pyramid of Caius Cestius somewhere near Rome. Flossie Cabanis from Bindle's Opera House in the Village to Broadway is a great step. But I tried to take it, my ambition fired when 16 years of age, seeing East Lynne, played here in the Village by Ralph Barrett, the coming romantic actor who enthralled my soul. True, I trailed back home, a broken failure, when Ralph disappeared in New York, leaving me alone in the city, but life broke him also. In all this place of silence there are no kindred spirits. How I wish Deuce could stand amid the pathos of these quiet fields and read these words. Julia Miller, we quarreled that morning, for he was 65, and I was 30, and I was nervous and heavy with the child whose birth I dreaded. I thought over the lost letter written me by that estranged young soul, whose betrayal of me I had concealed by marrying the old man. Then I took morphine and sat down to read. Across the blackness that came over my eyes, I see the flickering light of these words even now. And Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, today thou shalt be with me in paradise. Johnny saith, Father, thou canst never know the anguish that smote my heart for my disobedience, the moment I felt the remorseless wheel of the engine sink into the crying flesh of my leg. As they carried me to the home of Widow Morris, I could see the schoolhouse in the valley to which I played truant to steal rides upon the trains. I prayed to live until I could ask your forgiveness, and then your tears, your broken words of comfort. From the solace of that hour, I have gained infinite happiness. Thou wert wise to chisel for me, taken from the evil to come. Charlie French, did you ever find out which one of the O'Brien boys it was who snapped the toy pistol against my hand? That when the flags were red and white in the breeze, and Bucky Estill was firing the cannon brought to Spoon River from Vicksburg by Captain Harris, and the lemonade stands were running and the band was playing, to have it all spoiled by a piece of a cap shot under the skin of my hand, and the boys all crowding about me saying, You'll die of lockjaw, Charlie, sure. Oh dear, what chum of mine could have done it? Zena's would I was 16, and I had the most terrible dreams and specks before my eyes and nervous weakness. And I couldn't remember the books I read, like Frank Drummer, who memorized page after page. And my back was weak, and I worried, and I was embarrassed and stammered my lessons, and when I stood up to recite I'd forget everything that I had studied. Well, I saw Dr. Weiss's advertisement, and there I read everything in print, just as if he had known me, and about the dreams which I couldn't help. So I knew I was marked for an early grave. And I worried until I had a cough, and then the dreams stopped. And then I slept the sleep without dreams here on the hill by the river. Theodore the poet as a boy, Theodore, you sat for long hours on the shore of the turbid Spoon with deep-set eyes staring at the door of the crawfish's burrow, waiting for him to appear, pushing ahead, first his waving antennae like straws of hay, and soon his body, colored like soapstone, gemmed with eyes of jet. And you wondered in a trance of thought what he knew, what he desired, and why he lived at all. But later, your vision watched for men and women hiding in burrows of fate amid great cities, looking for the souls of them to come out, so that you could see how they lived, and for what, and why they kept crawling so busily along the sandy way, where what fails as the summer wanes. The town marshal, the prohibitionists made me town marshal when the saloons were voted out, because when I was a drinking man, before I joined the church, I killed a Swede at the sawmill near Maple Grove. And they wanted a terrible man, grim, righteous, strong, courageous, and a hater of saloons and drinkers, to keep law and order in the village. And they presented me with a loaded cane with which I struck Jack Maguire, before he drew the gun with which he killed me. The prohibitionists spent their money in vain to hang him, for in a dream I appeared to one of the 12 jurymen and told him the whole secret story. 14 years were enough for killing me. Jack Maguire, they would have lynched me had I not been secretly hurried away to the jail at Peoria. And yet I was going peacefully home, carrying my jug, a little drunk, when Logan, the marshal, halted me, called me a drunken hound and shook me, and when I cursed him for it, struck me with that prohibition-loaded cane, all this before I shot him. They would have hanged me except for this. My lawyer, Kinsey Keene, was helping to land old Thomas Rhodes for wrecking the bank, and the judge was a friend of Rhodes and wanted him to escape, and Kinsey offered to quit on Rhodes for 14 years for me. And the bargain was made. I served my time and learned to read and write. Doc as Gustine, I was not beloved of the villagers, but all because I spoke my mind, and met those who transgressed against me with plain remonstrance, hiding nor nurturing nor secret griefs nor grudges. That act of the Spartan boy is greatly praised, who hid the wolf under his cloak, letting it devour him, uncomplainingly. It is braver, I think, to snatch the wolf forth and fight him openly, even in the street, amid dust and howls of pain. The tongue may be an unruly member, but silence poisons the soul. Berate me who will, I am content. Nicholas Bindle, were you not ashamed, fellow citizens, when my estate was probated and everyone knew how small a fortune I left? You who hounded me in life to give to the churches, to the poor, to the village? Me who had already given much. And think you not I did not know that the pipe organ, which I gave to the church, played its christening songs when Deacon Rhodes, who broke and all but ruined me, worshipped for the first time after his acquittal? Jacob Goodpasture, when fought Sumter fell, and the war came, I cried out in bitterness of soul, O glorious republic now no more. When they buried my soldier son to the call of trumpets and the sound of drums, my heart broke beneath the weight of 80 years, and I cried, O son who died in a cause unjust, in the strife of freedom slain, and I crept here under the grass. And now from the battlements of time, behold, thrice 30 million souls being bound together in the love of larger truth, wrapped in the expectation of the birth of a new beauty, sprung from brotherhood and wisdom. I with eyes of spirit see the transfiguration before you see it. But ye infinite brood of golden eagles nesting ever higher, wheeling ever higher, the sunlight wooing of lofty places of thought, forgive the blindness of the departed owl. Harold on it, I leaned against the mantle, sick, thinking of my failure, looking into the abysm, weak from the noonday heat. A church bell sounded mournfully far away. I heard the cry of a baby, and the coughing of John Yarnell, bedridden, feverish, dying, then the violent voice of my wife. Watch out, the potatoes are burning. I smelled them. Then there was irresistible disgust. I pulled the trigger, blackness, light, unspeakable regret, fumbling for the world again. Too late. Thus I came here, with lungs for breathing. One cannot breathe here with lungs, though one must breathe. Of what use is it to rid one's self of the world, when no soul may ever escape the eternal destiny of life? Margaret full of slack, I would have been as great as George Eliot, but for an untoward fate. For look at the photograph of me made by Pennywit, chin resting on hand, and deep-set eyes, grey, too, and far-searching. But there was the old problem, should it be celibacy, matrimony, or unchastity? Then John Slack, the rich druggist, wooed me, luring me with the promise of leisure for my novel, and I married him, giving birth to 8 children, and had no time to write. It was all over with me anyway, when I ran the needle in my hand while washing the baby's things, and died from lockjaw, an ironical death. Hear me, ambitious souls, sex is the curse of life. George Trimble, do you remember when I stood on the steps of the Cott House and talked free silver and the single tax of Henry George? Then do you remember that, when the peerless leader lost the first battle, I began to talk prohibition and became active in the church. That was due to my wife, who pictured to me my destruction if I did not prove my morality to the people. Well, she ruined me, for the radicals grew suspicious of me, and the conservatives were never sure of me. And here I lie, unwept of all. Dr. Siegfried Eismann, I said when they handed me my diploma, I said to myself, I will be good and wise and brave and helpful to others. I said I will carry the Christian creed into the practice of medicine. Somehow the world and the other doctors know what's in your heart as soon as you make this high-souled resolution. And the way of it is they starve you out. And no one comes to you but the poor. And you find too late that being a doctor is just a way of making a living. And when you are poor and have to carry the Christian creed and wife and children all on your back, it is too much. That's why I made the elixir of youth, which landed me in the jail at Peoria, branded a swindler and a crook by the upright federal judge. Ace, Shaw, I never saw any difference between playing cards for money and selling real estate, practicing law, banking, or anything else, for everything is chance. Nevertheless, seest thou a man diligent in business? He shall stand before kings. Lois Spears, here lies the body of Lois Spears, born Lois Fluke, daughter of Willard Fluke, wife of Cyrus Spears, mother of Myrtle and Virgil Spears, children with clear eyes and sound limbs. I was born blind. I was the happiest of women as wife, mother and housekeeper, caring for my loved ones, and making my home a place of order and bounteous hospitality. For I went about the rooms, and about the garden with an instinct as sure as sight, as though there were eyes in my fingertips. Glory to God in the highest. Justice on it, it is true, fellow citizens, that my old docket lying there for years on a shelf above my head, and over the seat of justice. I say it is true that docket had an iron rim which gashed my baldness when it fell. Somehow I think it was shaken loose by the heave of the air all over town when the gasoline tank at the canning works blew up and burned Butch Weldy. But let us argue points in order, and reason the whole case carefully. First, I concede my head was cut, but second, the frightful thing was this. The leaves of the docket shot and showered around me like a deck of cards in the hands of a sleight-of-hand performer. And up to the end, I saw those leaves till I said at last, those are not leaves. Why, can't you see they are days and days and the days and days of 70 years? And why do you torture me with leaves and the little entries on them? Willard Fluke, my wife, lost her health, and dwindled until she weighed scarce 90 pounds. Then that woman, whom the men styled Cleopatra, came along. And we married ones, all broke our vows, myself among the rest. Years passed, and one by one death claimed them all in some hideous form, and I was borne along by dreams of God's particular grace for me, and I began to write, reams on reams of the second coming of Christ. Then Christ came to me and said, Go into the church and stand before the congregation and confess your sin. But just as I stood up and began to speak, I saw my little girl, who was sitting in the front seat, my little girl who was born blind. After that, all is blackness. Ana Clute, over and over they used to ask me, while buying the wine or the beer in Peoria first, and later in Chicago, Denver, Frisco, New York, wherever I lived, how I happened to lead the life, and what was the start of it. Well, I told them a silk dress, and a promise of marriage from a rich man. It was Lucius Atherton, but that was not really it at all. Suppose a boy steals an apple from the tray at the grocery store, and they all begin to call him a thief, the editor, minister, judge, and all the people. A thief, a thief, a thief, wherever he goes. And he can't get work, and he can't get bread without stealing it. Why, the boy will steal. It's the way the people regard the theft of the apple that makes the boy what he is. Lucius Atherton, when my mustache curled, and my hair was black, and I wore tight trousers and a diamond stud, I was an excellent knave of hearts and took many a trick. But when the gray hairs began to appear, lo, a new generation of girls laughed at me, not fearing me, and I had no more exciting adventures wherein I was all but shot for a heartless devil, but only drabby affairs, warmed over affairs of other days and other men. And time went on until I lived at Maya's restaurant, partaking of Shaw Tatas, a gray, untidy, toothless, discarded, rural Don Juan. There is a mighty shade here who sings of one named Beatrice, and I see now that the force that made him great drove me to the dregs of life. Homa clap often Ana Clute at the gate refused me the parting kiss, saying we should be engaged before that. And just with a distant clasp of the hand she bade me good night, as I brought her home from the skating rink or the revival. No sooner did my departing footsteps die away than Lucius Atherton, so I learned when Ana went to Peoria, stole in at her window, I took her riding behind his spanking team of bays into the country. The shock of it made me settle down, and I put all the money I got from my father's estate into the canning factory to get the job of head accountant, and lost it all. And then I knew I was one of life's fools, whom only death would treat as the equal of other men, making me feel like a man. Deacon Taylor, I belonged to the church, and to the party of prohibition, and the villagers thought I died of eating watermelon. In truth, I had cirrhosis of the liver, for every noon for 30 years, I slipped behind the prescription partition in Trainer's drug store and bought a generous drink from the bottle marked Spiritus Fermenti. Sam Hooky, I ran away from home with the circus, having fallen in love with Mademoiselle Estrelada, the lion tamer. One time, having starved the lions for more than a day, I entered the cage and began to beat Brutus and Leo and Gypsy. Whereupon Brutus sprang upon me and killed me. On entering these regions, I met a shadow who cursed me and said it served me right. It was Robespierre? Cooney Potter, I inherited 40 acres from my father, and by working my wife, my 2 sons and 2 daughters from dawn to dusk, I acquired 1,000 acres. But not content, wishing to own 2,000 acres, I bustled through the years with axe and plow, toiling, denying myself, my wife, my sons, my daughters. Squire Higby wrongs me to say that I died from smoking Red Eagle cigars. Eating hot pie and gulping coffee during the scorching hours of harvest time brought me here ere I had reached my 60th year. Fiddler Jones, the earth keeps some vibration going there in your heart, and that is you. And if the people find you can fiddle, why, fiddle you must, for all your life. What do you see, a harvest of clover? Or a meadow to walk through to the river? The wind's in the con, you rub your hands for beeves hereafter ready for market, or else you hear the rustle of skirts like the girls when dancing at Little Grove. To Cooney Potter a pillar of dust, all whirling leaves, meant ruinous drouth. They looked to me like redhead Sammy stepping it off. To Toralaw, how could I till my 40 acres, not to speak of getting more, with a medley of horns, bassoons and piccolos, stirred in my brain by crows and robins, and the creak of a windmill. Only these? And I never started to plow in my life that someone did not stop in the road and take me away to a dance or picnic. I ended up with 40 acres, I ended up with a broken fiddle, and a broken laugh, and 1,000 memories, and not a single regret. Nellie Clark, I was only 8 years old, and before I grew up and knew what it meant I had no words for it, except that I was frightened and told my mother, and that my father got a pistol and would have killed Charlie, who was a big boy, 15 years old, except for his mother. Nevertheless, the story clung to me, but the man who married me, a widower of 35, was a newcomer and never heard it till 2 years after we were married. Then he considered himself cheated, and the village agreed that I was not really a virgin. Well, he deserted me, and I died the following winter. Louise Smith Herbert broke our engagement of 8 years when Annabelle returned to the village from the seminary. Ah me, if I had let my love for him alone, it might have grown into a beautiful sorrow, who knows, filling my life with healing fragrance. But I tortured it, I poisoned it, I blinded its eyes, and it became hatred, deadly ivy instead of clematis, and my soul fell from its support, its tendrils tangled in decay. Do not let the will play gardener to your soul, unless you are sure it is wiser than your soul's nature. Herbert Marshall, all your sorrow, Louise, and hatred of me sprang from your delusion that it was wantonness of spirit and contempt of your soul's rights, which made me turn to Annabelle and forsake you. You really grew to hate me for love of me, because I was your soul's happiness, formed and tempted to solve your life for you, and would not. But you were my misery. If you had been my happiness, would I not have clung to you? This is life's sorrow, that one can be happy only where two are, and that our hearts are drawn to stars which want us not. George Gray, I have studied many times the marble which was chiseled for me, a boat with a furled sail at rest in a harbour. In truth, it pictures not my destination, but my life. For love was offered me, and I shrank from its disillusionment. Sorrow knocked at my door, but I was afraid. Ambition called to me, but I dreaded the chances. Yet all the while I hungered for meaning in my life. And now I know that we must lift the sail and catch the winds of destiny wherever they drive the boat. To put meaning in one's life may end in madness, but life without meaning is the torture of restlessness and vague desire. It is a boat longing for the sea and yet afraid. Henry Bennett, it never came into my mind until I was ready to die that Jenny had loved me to death, with malice of heart. For I was 70, she was 35, and I wore myself to a shadow trying to husband Jenny, rosy Jenny full of the ardor of life. For all my wisdom and grace of mind gave her no delight at all, in very truth, But ever and anon she spoke of the giant strength of Willard Schaefer, and of his wonderful feat of lifting a traction engine out of the ditch one time at Georgie Kirby's. So Jenny inherited my fortune and married Willard. That mount of brawn? That clownish soul? Griffey the Cooper should know about tubs. But I learned about life as well, and you who loiter around these graves think you know life. You think your eye sweeps about a wide horizon. Perhaps, in truth, you are only looking around the interior of your tub. You cannot lift yourself to its rim and see the outer world of things, and at the same time see yourself. You are submerged in the tub of yourself. Taboos and rules and appearances are the staves of your tub. Break them and dispel the witchcraft of thinking your tub is life. And that you know life? Sexsmith the dentist, do you think that odes and sermons, and the ringing of church bells, and the blood of old men and young men, martyred for the truth they saw with eyes made bright by faith in God, accomplished the world's great reformations? Do you think that the battle hymn of the Republic would have been heard if the chattel slave had crowned the dominant dollar, in spite of Whitney's cotton gin, and steam and rolling mills and iron and telegraphs and white free labor? Do you think that Daisy Fraser had been put out and driven out if the canning works had never needed her little house and lot? Or do you think the poker room of Johnny Taylor and Burchard's bar had been closed up if the money lost and spent for beer had not been turned, by closing them, to Thomas Rhodes for larger sales of shoes and blankets, and children's cloaks and gold oak cradles? Why, a moral truth is a hollow tooth which must be propped with gold. A.D. Blood, if you in the village think that my work was a good one, who closed the saloons and stopped all playing at cards, and hailed old Daisy Fraser before justice on it, in many a crusade to purge the people of sin. Why do you let the milliner's daughter Dora, and the worthless son of Benjamin Pantia, nightly make my grave their unholy pillow? Robert Southey Burke, I spent my money trying to elect you Mayor A.D. Blood. I lavished my admiration upon you. You were to my mind the almost perfect man. You devoured my personality, and the idealism of my youth, and the strength of a high-souled fealty. And all my hopes for the world, and all my beliefs in truth, were smelted up in the blinding heat of my devotion to you, and molded into your image. And then when I found what you were, that your soul was small, and your words were false as your blue-white porcelain teeth, and your cuffs of celluloid, I hated the love I had for you, I hated myself, I hated you for my wasted soul, and wasted youth. And I say to all, beware of ideals, beware of giving your love away to any man alive. Dora Williams, when Reuben Pantia ran away and threw me, I went to Springfield. There I met a lush, whose father just deceased left him a fortune. He married me when drunk. My life was wretched. A year passed, and one day they found him dead. That made me rich. I moved on to Chicago. After a time met Tyler Rountree villain. I moved on to New York. A gray-haired magnate went mad about me, so another fortune. He died one night right in my arms, you know. I saw his purple face for years thereafter. There was almost a scandal. I moved on, this time to Paris. I was now a woman, insidious, subtle, versed in the world and rich. My sweet apartment near the Champs-Élysées became a center for all sorts of people, musicians, poets, dandies, artists, nobles, where we spoke French and German, Italian, English. I wed Count Navigato, native of Genoa. We went to Rome. He poisoned me, I think. Now in the Campo Santo, overlooking the sea where young Columbus dreamed new worlds, see what they chiseled. Contessa Navigato implorer, eterna quiet. Mrs. Williams, I was the milliner talked about, lied about, mother of Dora, whose strange disappearance was charged to her rearing. My eye quick to beauty saw much beside ribbons and buckles and feathers and leghorns and felts, to set off sweet faces, and dark hair and gold. One thing I will tell you, and one I will ask. The stealers of husbands wear powder and trinkets and fashionable hats. Wives, wear them yourselves. Hats may make divorces, they also prevent them. Well now, let me ask you, if all of the children, born here in Spoon River had been reared by the county, somewhere on a farm, and the fathers and mothers had been given their freedom to live and enjoy, change mates if they wished, do you think that Spoon River had been any the worse? William and Emily, there is something about death like love itself. If with someone with whom you have known passion and the glow of youthful love, you also, after years of life together, feel the sinking of the fire, and thus fade away together, gradually, faintly, delicately, as it were in each other's arms, passing from the familiar room. That is a power of unison between souls like love itself. The circuit judge take note, passes by, of the sharp erosions eaten in my headstone by the wind and rain, almost as if an intangible nemesis or hatred were mocking scars against me, but to destroy, and not preserve my memory. I in life was the circuit judge, a maker of notches, deciding cases on the points the lawyers scored, not on the right of the matter. O wind and rain, leave my headstone alone. For worse than the anger of the wronged, the curses of the poor, was to lie speechless, yet with vision clear, seeing that even Hodput, the murderer, hanged by my sentence, was innocent in soul compared with me. Blind Jack, I had fiddled all day at the county fair. But driving home, Butch, Weldy, and Jack Maguire, who were roaring full, made me fiddle and fiddle to the song of Susie Skinner, while whipping the horses till they ran away. Blind as I was, I tried to get out as the carriage fell in the ditch, and was caught in the wheels and killed. There's a blind man here with a brow as big and white as a cloud. And all we fiddlers, from highest to lowest, writers of music and tellers of stories, sit at his feet and hear him sing of the fall of Troy. John Horace Burleson, I won the prize essay at school here in the village, and published a novel before I was 25. I went to the city for themes and to enrich my art, then married the banker's daughter, and later became president of the bank, always looking forward to some leisure to write an epic novel of the war. Meanwhile, friend of the great and lover of letters, and host to Matthew Arnold and to Emerson, an after-dinner speaker, writing essays for local clubs. At last brought here, my boyhood home, you know, not even a little tablet in Chicago to keep my name alive. How great it is to write the single line, "Roll on, thou deep and dark blue ocean, roll." Nancy Napwell, don't you see this was the way of it? We bought the farm with what he inherited, and his brothers and sisters accused him of poisoning his father's mind against the rest of them, and we never had any peace with our treasure. The murrain took the cattle, and the crops failed, and lightning struck the granary. So we mortgaged the farm to keep going, and he grew silent and was worried all the time. Then some of the neighbors refused to speak to us, and took sides with his brothers and sisters, and I had no place to turn, as one may say to himself, at an earlier time in life. No matter, so-and-so is my friend, or I can shake this off with a little trip to Decatur. Then the dreadfulest smells infested the rooms. So I set fire to the beds, and the old witch house went up in a roar of flame, as I danced in the yard with waving arms, while he wept like a freezing steer. Barry Holden, the very fall my sister Nancy Knapp set fire to the house they were trying Dr. Duval for the murder of Zora Clemens, and I sat in the cot 2 weeks listening to every witness. It was clear he had got her in a family way, and to let the child be born would not do. Well, how about me with 8 children, and 1 coming, and the farm mortgaged to Thomas Rhodes? And when I got home that night, after listening to the story of the buggy ride, and the finding of Zora in the ditch, the first thing I saw, right there by the steps where the boys had hacked for angleworms, was the hatchet, and just as I entered there was my wife, standing before me, big with child. She started the talk of the mortgaged farm, and I killed her. State's Attorney Fowler's I, the scourge-wielder, balance-wrecker, smiter with whips and sods. I, hater of the breakers of the law. I, legalist, inexorable and bitter, driving the jury to hang the madman. Barry Holden was made as one dead by light too bright for eyes, and woke to face a truth with bloody brow. Steel forceps fumbled by a doctor's hand against my boy's head as he entered life made him an idiot. I turned to books of science to care for him. That's how the world of those whose minds are sick became my work in life, and all my world. Poor ruined boy, you were, at last, the potter and I and all my deeds of charity the vessels of your hand. Wendell P. Bloyd they first charged me with disorderly conduct, there being no statute on blasphemy. Later they locked me up as insane where I was beaten to death by a Catholic god. My offense was this. I said God lied to Adam, and destined him to lead the life of a fool, ignorant that there is evil in the world as well as good. And when Adam outwitted God by eating the apple and saw through the lie, God drove him out of Eden to keep him from taking the fruit of immortal life. For Christ's sake, you sensible people, here's what God himself says about it in the book of Genesis. And the Lord God said, Behold, the man is become as one of us. A little envy, you see, to know good and evil, the all is good lie exposed, and now lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat, and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden. The reason I believe God crucified his own son to get out of the wretched tangle is, because it sounds just like him. Francis Turner, I could not run or play in boyhood. In manhood, I could only sip the cup, not drink, for scarlet fever left my heart diseased. Yet I lie here soothed by a secret none, but Mary knows. There is a garden of acacia, catalpa trees, and arbors sweet with vines, there on that afternoon in June by Mary's side. Kissing her with my soul upon my lips, it suddenly took flight. Franklin Jones, if I could have lived another year, I could have finished my flying machine and become rich and famous. Hence it is fitting the workman who tried to chisel a dove for me made it look more like a chicken. For what is it all but being hatched and running about the yard to the day of the block? Save that a man has an angel's brain and sees the axe from the first. Junham Church, I was attorney for the Q and the Indemnity Company which insured the owners of the mine. I pulled the wires with judge and jury and the upper cots to beat the claims of the crippled, the widow and orphan, and made a fortune thereat. The Bar Association sank my praises in a high-flown resolution, and the floral tributes were many, but the rats devoured my heart, and a snake made a nest in my skull. Russian Sonia I, born in Weimar of a mother who was French and German father, a most learned professor, orphaned at 14 years, became a dancer, known as Russian Sonia, all up and down the boulevards of Paris, mistress betimes of sundry dukes and counts, and later of poor artists and of poets. At 40 years passé, I sought New York and met old Patrick Hummer on the boat, red-faced and hale, though turned his 60th year, returning after having sold a shipload of cattle in the German city, Hamburg. He brought me to Spoon River, and we lived here for 20 years. They thought that we were married. This oak tree near me is the favorite haunt of blue jays chattering all the day. And why not? For my very dust is laughing for thinking of the humorous thing called life. Issa Nutta Doc Mayers said I had satyriasis, and Doc Hill called it leukemia. But I know what brought me here. I was 64 but strong as a man of 35 or 40. And it wasn't writing a letter a day, and it wasn't late hours 7 nights a week, and it wasn't the strain of thinking of Minnie, and it wasn't fear or a jealous dread, or the endless task of trying to fathom her wonderful mind, or sympathy for the wretched life she led with her first and second husband. It was none of these that laid me low, but the clamor of daughters and threats of sons, and the sneers and curses of all my kin, right up to the day I sneaked to Peoria and married Minnie in spite of them. And why do you wonder my will was made for the best and purest of women? Bonnie Hainsfeather, if the excursion train to Peoria had just been wrecked, I might have escaped with my life. Certainly I should have escaped this place. But as it was burned as well, they mistook me for John Allen, who was sent to the Hebrew cemetery at Chicago, and John for me, so I lie here. It was bad enough to run a clothing store in this town, but to be buried here. Etch Petit, the poet seeds in a dry pod, tick, 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 like mites in a quarrel, faint iambics that the full breeze wakens, but the pine tree makes a symphony thereof. Triolets, villanelles, rondels, rondos, ballads by the ska with the same old thought. The snows and the roses of yesterday are vanished, and what is love but a rose that fades? Life all around me here in the village, tragedy, comedy, valor and truth, courage, constancy, heroism, failure, all in the loom, and oh what patterns. Woodlands, meadows, streams and rivers, blind to all of it all my life long. Triolets, villanelles, rondels, rondos, seeds in a dry pod, tick, 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 tick. What little iambics, while Homer and Whitman rod in the pines. Paul and Barrett, almost the shell of a woman after the surgeon's knife. And almost a year to creep back into strength till the dawn of our wedding decennial found me my seeming self again. We walked the forest together, by a path of soundless moss and turf. But I could not look in your eyes, and you could not look in my eyes, for such sorrow was ours. The beginning of gray in your hair, and I but a shell of myself. And what did we talk of? Sky and water, anything, most, to hide our thoughts. And then your gift of wild roses, set on the table to grace our dinner. Poor heart, how bravely you struggled to imagine and live a remembered rapture. Then my spirit drooped as the night came on, and you left me alone in my room for a while, as you did when I was a bride, poor heart. And I looked in the mirror and something said, one should be all dead when one is half dead, nor ever mock life, nor ever cheat love. And I did it looking there in the mirror. Dear, have you ever understood? Mrs. Charles Bliss Reverend Wiley advised me not to divorce him for the sake of the children, and Judge Summers advised him the same. So we stuck to the end of the path. But 2 of the children thought he was right, and 2 of the children thought I was right. And the 2 who sided with him blamed me, and the 2 who sided with me blamed him, and they grieved for the one they sided with. And all were torn with the guilt of judging, and tortured in soul, because they could not admire equally him and me. Now, every gardener knows that plants grown in cellars, or under stones, are twisted and yellow and weak. And no mother would let her baby suck diseased milk from her breast. Yet preachers and judges advise the raising of souls where there is no sunlight, but only twilight, no warmth, but only dampness and cold, preachers and judges. Mrs. George Reese to this generation I would say, memorize some bit of verse of truth or beauty. It may serve a turn in your life. My husband had nothing to do with the fall of the bank, he was only cashier. The wreck was due to the president, Thomas Rhodes, and his vain, unscrupulous son. Yet my husband was sent to prison, and I was left with the children, to feed and clothe and school them. And I did it, and sent them forth into the world all clean and strong, and all through the wisdom of Pope, the poet. Act well your part, there all the honor lies. Rev. Lemuel Wiley. I preached 4,000 sermons, I conducted 40 revivals, and baptized many converts. Yet no deed of mine shines brighter in the memory of the world, and none is treasured more by me. Look how I saved the blisses from divorce, and kept the children free from that disgrace, to grow up into moral men and women, happy themselves, a credit to the village. Thomas Ross, Jr. This I saw with my own eyes. A cliff swallow made her nest in a hole of the high claybank there near Miller's Ford. But no sooner were the young hatched than a snake crawled up to the nest to devour the brood. Then the mother swallow with swift flutterings and shrill cries fought at the snake, blinding him with the beat of her wings, until he, wriggling and rearing his head, fell backward down the bank into Spoon River and was drowned. Scarcely an hour passed until a shrike impaled the mother swallow on a thorn. As for myself, I overcame my lower nature only to be destroyed by my brother's ambition. Rev. Abner Pete. I had no objection at all to selling my household effects at auction on the village square. It gave my beloved flock the chance to get something which had belonged to me for a memorial. But that trunk which was struck off to Burchard, the grog keeper, did you know it contained the manuscripts of a lifetime of sermons, and he burned them as waste paper. Jefferson Howard. My valiant fight, for I call it valiant, with my father's beliefs from old Virginia, hating slavery, but no less war. I, full of spirit, audacity, courage thrown into life here in Spoon River, with its dominant forces drawn from New England, Republicans, Calvinists, merchants, bankers, hating me, yet fearing my arm, with wife and children heavy to carry, yet fruits of my very zest of life. Stealing odd pleasures that cost me prestige, and reaping evils I had not sown. Foe of the church with its charnel dankness, friend of the human touch of the tavern, tangled with fates all alien to me, deserted by hands I called my own. Then just as I felt my giant strength shot of breath, behold my children had wound their lives in stranger gardens, and I stood alone, as I started alone my valiant life. I died on my feet, facing the silence, facing the prospect that no one would know of the fight I made. Judge Sella Lively. Suppose you stood just 5 feet 2, and had worked your way as a grocery clock, studying law by candlelight until you became an attorney at law. And then suppose through your diligence and regular church attendance, you became attorney for Thomas Rhodes, collecting notes and mortgages, and representing all the widows in the probate court. And through it all they jeered at your size, and laughed at your clothes and your polished boots. And then suppose you became the county judge, and Jefferson Howard and Quincy Keene, and Harmon Whitney, and all the giants who had sneered at you, were forced to stand before the bar and say, Your Honor. Well, don't you think it was natural that I made it hard for them? Albert skirting Jonas Keene thought his lot a hard one, because his children were all failures. But I know of a fate more trying than that. It is to be a failure while your children are successes. For I raised a brood of eagles who flew away at last, leaving me a crow on the abandoned bough. Then, with the ambition to prefix honorable to my name, and thus to win my children's admiration, I ran for county superintendent of schools, spending my accumulations to win, and lost. That fall my daughter received first prize in Paris for her picture, entitled The Old Mill. It was of the water mill before Henry Wilkin put in steam. The feeling that I was not worthy of her finished me. Jonas Keene. Why did Albert Skirting kill himself trying to be county superintendent of schools, blessed as he was with the means of life and wonderful children, bringing him honor ere he was 60? If even one of my boys could have run a newsstand, or one of my girls could have married a decent man, I should not have walked in the rain and jumped into bed with clothes all wet, refusing medical aid. Eugenia. Todd. Have any of you, passers-by, had an old tooth that was an unceasing discomfort, or a pain in the side that never quite left you, or a malignant growth that grew with time, so that even in profoundest slumber there was shadowy consciousness or the phantom of thought of the tooth, the side, the growth? Even so thwarted love, or defeated ambition, or a blunder in life which mixed your life hopelessly to the end, will like a tooth or a pain in the side, float through your dreams in the final sleep till perfect freedom from the earth sphere comes to you, as one who wakes healed and glad in the morning. Yibo, they got me into the Sunday school in Spoon River and tried to get me to drop Confucius for Jesus. I could have been no worse off if I had tried to get them to drop Jesus for Confucius. For without any warning, as if it were a prank, and sneaking up behind me, Harry Wiley, the minister's son, caved my ribs into my lungs with a blow of his fist. Now I shall never sleep with my ancestors in Pekin, and no children shall worship at my grave. Washington McNeely Rich, honored by my fellow citizens, the father of many children, born of a noble mother, all raised there in the great mansion house at the edge of town. Note the cedar tree on the lawn. I sent all the boys to Ann Arbor, all of the girls to Rockford, the while my life went on, getting more riches and honors, resting under my cedar tree at evening. The years went on. I sent the girls to Europe, I dowered them when married. I gave the boys money to start in business. They were strong children, promising as apples before the bitten places show. But John fled the country in disgrace. Jenny died in childbirth. I sat under my cedar tree. Harry killed himself after a debauch. Susan was divorced. I sat under my cedar tree. Paul was invalided from overstudy. Mary became a recluse at home for love of a man. I sat under my cedar tree. All were gone, or broken-winged, or devoured by life. I sat under my cedar tree. My mate, the mother of them, was taken. I sat under my cedar tree till 90 years were told. O maternal earth, which rocks the fallen leaf to sleep, Paul McNeely, dear Jane, dear winsome Jane, how you stole in the room where I lay so ill, in your nurse's cap and linen cuffs, and took my hand and said with a smile, you are not so ill, you'll soon be well. And how the liquid thought of your eyes sank in my eyes like dew that slips into the heart of a flower. Dear Jane, the whole McNeely fortune could not have bought your care of me by day and night and day, nor paid for your smile, nor the warmth of your soul, in your little hands laid on my brow. Jane, till the flame of life went out in the dark above the disk of night, I longed and hoped to be well again, to pillow my head on your little breasts, and hold you fast in a clasp of love. Did my father provide for you when he died, Jane, dear Jane? Mary McNeely Passerby, to love is to find your own soul through the soul of the beloved one. When the beloved one withdraws itself from your soul, then you have lost your soul. It is written, I have a friend, but my sorrow has no friend. Hence my long years of solitude at the home of my father, trying to get myself back, and to turn my sorrow into a suprema self. But there was my father with his sorrows, sitting under the cedar tree, a picture that sank into my heart at last, bringing infinite repose. Oh, ye souls who have made life fragrant and white as tube roses from earth's dark soil, eternal peace. Daniel M. Cumba, when I went to the city, Mary McNeely, I meant to return for you. Yes, I did. But Laura, my landlady's daughter, stole into my life somehow, and won me away. Then, after some years, whom should I meet but Georgian Mina from Niles, a sprout of the free love, Fourierist gardens that flourished before the war all over Ohio. Her dilettante lover had tired of her, and she turned to me for strength and solace. She was some kind of a crying thing one takes in one's arms, and all at once it slimes your face with its running nose, and voids its essence all over you, then bites your hand and springs away. And there you stand bleeding and smelling to heaven. Why, Mary McNeely, I was not worthy to kiss the hem of your robe. Georgian sand miner, a stepmother drove me from home, embittering me. A squawman, a flaneur and dilettante took my virtue. For years I was his mistress, no one knew. I learned from him the parasite cunning with which I moved with the bluffs, like a flea on a dog. All the time I was nothing but very private, with different men. Then Daniel, the radical, had me for years. His sister called me his mistress, and Daniel wrote me. Shameful word, soiling our beautiful love, but my anger coiled, preparing its fangs. My lesbian friend next took a hand. She hated Daniel's sister, and Daniel despised her midget husband, and she saw a chance for a poisonous thrust. I must complain to the wife of Daniel's pursuit, but before I did that I begged him to fly to London with me. Why not stay in the city just as we have? He asked. Then I turned submarine and revenged his repulse in the arms of my dilettante friend, then up to the surface, bearing the letter that Daniel wrote me, to prove my honor was all intact, showing it to his wife, my lesbian friend and everyone. If Daniel had only shot me dead, instead of stripping me naked of lies, a hollow in body and soul. Thomas Rhodes very well, you liberals, and navigators into realms intellectual, you sailors through heights imaginative, blown about by erratic currents, tumbling into air pockets, you Margaret full of slacks, Patisse, and Tennessee Claflin Shopes. You towned with all your boasted wisdom how hard at the last it is to keep the soul from splitting into cellular atoms. While we, seekers of earth's treasures, getters and hoarders of gold, a self-contained, compact, harmonized, even to the end. I'd a chicken after I had attended lectures at our Chautauqua and studied French for 20 years, committing the grammar almost by heart. I thought I'd take a trip to Paris to give my culture a final polish. So I went to Peoria for a passport. Thomas Rhodes was on the train that morning. And there the clock of the district court made me swear to support and defend the Constitution. Yes, even me, who couldn't defend or support it at all. And what do you think? That very morning, the federal judge, in the very next room to the room where I took the oath, decided the Constitution exempted Rhodes from paying taxes for the water works of Spoon River. Pennywit, the artist, I lost my patronage in Spoon River from trying to put my mind in the camera to catch the soul of the person. The very best picture I ever took was of Judge Summers, attorney at law. He sat upright and had me pause till he got his cross eyes straight. Then when he was ready he said, "All right." And I yell, overruled, and his eye turned up. And I caught him just as he used to look when saying, "I accept." Jim Brown, while I was handling Dom Pedro, I got at the thing that divides the race between men who are for singing Turkey in the Straw, or There is a Fountain Filled with Blood. Like Ryle Potter used to sing it over at Concord, for cards, or for Rev. Pete's lecture on the Holy Land, for skipping the light fantastic, or passing the plate, for pinafore or a Sunday school cantata, for men, or for money, for the people or against them. This was it, Rev. Pete and the Social Purity Club, headed by Ben Pantia's wife, went to the village trustees and asked them to make me take Dom Pedro from the barn of Wash McNeely, there at the edge of town, to a barn outside of the corporation, on the ground that it corrupted public morals. Well, Ben Pantia and Fiddler Jones saved the day. They thought it a slam on Colts. Robert Davidson, I grew spiritually fat living off the souls of men. If I saw a soul that was strong, I wounded its pride and devoured its strength. The shelters of friendship knew my cunning, for where I could steal a friend I did so. And wherever I could enlarge my power by undermining ambition, I did so, thus to make smooth my own. And to triumph over other souls, just to assert and prove my superior strength, was with me a delight, the keen exhilaration of soul gymnastics. Devouring souls, I should have lived forever. But their undigested remains bred in me a deadly nephritis, with fear, restlessness, sinking spirits, hatred, suspicion, vision disturbed. I collapsed at last with a shriek. Remember the acorn, it does not devour other acorns. Elsa Wertmann, I was a peasant girl from Germany, blue-eyed, rosy, happy and strong. And the first place I worked was at Thomas Green's. On a summer's day when she was away, he stole into the kitchen and took me right in his arms and kissed me on my throat, I turning my head. Then neither of us seemed to know what happened, and I cried for what would become of me, and cried as my secret began to show. One day, Mrs. Green said she understood, and would make no trouble for me, and being childless, would adopt it. He had given her a farm to be still, so she hid in the house and sent out rumors, as if it were going to happen to her. And all went well, and the child was born. They were so kind to me. Later, I married Gus Wertmann, and years passed. But, at political rallies when sit-as-by thought I was crying at the eloquence of Hamilton Green, that was not it. No, I wanted to say, that's my son, that's my son. Hamilton Green, I was the only child of Francis Harris of Virginia and Thomas Green of Kentucky, of valiant and honorable blood both. To them, I owe all that I became, judge, member of Congress, leader in the state. From my mother I inherited vivacity, fancy, language, from my father will, judgment, logic. All honor to them for what service I was to the people. Ernest Hyde, my mind was a mirror. It saw what it saw, it knew what it knew. In youth my mind was just a mirror in a rapidly flying car, which catches and loses bits of the landscape. Then in time great scratches were made on the mirror, letting the outside world come in, and letting my inner self look out. For this is the birth of the soul in sorrow, a birth with gains and losses. The mind sees the world as a thing apart, and the soul makes the world at one with itself. A mirror scratched reflects no image, and this is the silence of wisdom. Roger Heston, oh many times did Ernest Hyde and I argue about the freedom of the will. My favorite metaphor was Pricket's cow roped out to grass, and free you know as far as the length of the rope. One day while arguing so, watching the cow pull at the rope to get beyond the circle which she had eaten bare, out came the stake, and tossing up her head, she ran for us. "What's that, free will or what?" said Ernest, running. I fell just as she gawed me to my death. Amos Sibley, not character, not fortitude, not patience were mine, the which the village thought I had in bearing with my wife, while preaching on, doing the work God chose for me. I loathed her as a termagant, as a wanton. I knew of her adulteries, everyone. But even so, if I divorce the woman, I must forsake the ministry. Therefore to do God's work and have it crop, I bar with her. So lied I to myself, so lied I to Spoon River. Yet I tried lecturing, ran for the legislature, canvassed for books, with just the thought in mind, if I make money thus, I will divorce her. Mrs. Sibley, the secret of the stars, gravitation, the secret of the earth, layers of rock, the secret of the soil, to receive seed, the secret of the seed, the germ, the secret of man, the sower, the secret of woman, the soil, my secret, under a mound that you shall never find. Adam Wirach, I was crushed between Altgeld and Amma. I lost many friends, much time and money fighting for Altgeld, whom Editor Wedden denounced as the candidate of gamblers and anarchists. Then, Amma started to ship dressed meat to Spoon River, forcing me to shut down my slaughterhouse, and my butcher shop went all to pieces. The new forces of Altgeld and Amma caught me at the same time. I thought it due me to recoup the money I lost and to make good the friends that left me, for the governor to appoint me canal commissioner. Instead, he appointed Wedden of the Spoon River Argus, so I ran for the legislature and was elected. I said to hell with principle and sold my vote on Charles T. Yerkes streetcar franchise. Of course I was one of the fellows they caught. Who was it, Amma, Altgeld or myself, that ruined me? Ezra Bartlett, a chaplain in the army, a chaplain in the prisons, an exhorter in Spoon River, drunk with divinity, Spoon River, yet bringing poor Eliza Johnson to shame, and myself to scorn and wretchedness. But why will you never see that love of women, and even love of wine, are the stimulants by which the soul, hungering for divinity, reaches the ecstatic vision and sees the celestial outposts? Only after many trials for strength, only when all stimulants fail, does the aspiring soul, by its own sheer power, find the divine by resting upon itself. Amelia Garrick, yes. Here I lie close to a stunted rose bush in a forgotten place near the fence where the thickets from Sivers woods have crept over, growing sparsely. And you are a letter in New York, the wife of a noted millionaire, a name in the society columns, beautiful, admired, magnified perhaps by the mirage of distance. You have succeeded, I have failed in the eyes of the world. You are alive, I am dead. Yet I know that I vanquished your spirit, and I know that lying here far from you, unheard of among your great friends in the brilliant world where you move, I am really the unconquerable power over your life that robs it of complete triumph. John Hancock Otis, as to democracy, fellow citizens, are you not prepared to admit that I, who inherited riches and was to the manner born, was second to none in Spoon River in my devotion to the cause of liberty, while my contemporary, Anthony Findlay, born in a shanty and beginning life as a water carrier to the section hands, then becoming a section hand when he was grown, afterwards foreman of the gang, until he rose to the superintendency of the railroad, living in Chicago, was a veritable slave driver, grinding the faces of labor, and a bitter enemy of democracy. And I say to you, Spoon River, and to you, O Republic, beware of the man who rises to power from one suspender. Anthony Findlay, both for the country and for the man, and for a country as well as a man, 'tis better to be feared than loved. And if this country would rather part with the friendship of every nation than surrender its wealth, I say of a man 'tis worse to lose money than friends. And I rend the curtain that hides the soul of an ancient aspiration. When the people clamor for freedom, they really seek for power are the strong. I, Anthony Findlay, rising to greatness from a humble water carrier, until I could say to thousands, come, and say to thousands, go, affirm that a nation can never be good, or achieve the good, where the strong and the wise have not the rod to use on the dull and weak. John Cabanis, neither spite, fellow citizens, nor forgetfulness of the shiftlessness, and the lawlessness and waste under democracy's rule in Spoon River, made me desert the party of law and order, and led the Liberal Party. Fellow citizens, I saw as one with second sight that every man of the millions of men who give themselves to freedom, and fail while freedom fails, enduring waste and lawlessness, and the rule of the weak and the blind, dies in the hope of building earth, like the coral insect, for the temple to stand on at the last. And I swear that freedom will wage to the end the war for making every soul wise and strong, and as fit to rule as Plato's lofty guardians in a world republic girdled. The unknown, ye aspiring ones, listen to the story of the unknown who lies here with no stone to mark the place. As a boy reckless and wanton, wandering with gun in hand through the forest near the mansion of Aaron Hatfield, I shot a hawk perched on the top of a dead tree. He fell with guttural cry at my feet, his wing broken. Then I put him in a cage where he lived many days, cawing angrily at me when I offered him food. Daily, I search the realms of Hades for the soul of the hawk, that I may offer him the friendship of one whom life wounded and caged. Alexander Throckmorton, in youth, my wings were strong and tireless, but I did not know the mountains. In age I knew the mountains, but my weary wings could not follow my vision. Genius is wisdom and youth. Jonathan Swift Summers. One after you have enriched your soul to the highest point, with books, thought, suffering, the understanding of many personalities, the power to interpret glances, silences, the pauses in momentous transformations, the genius of divination and prophecy, so that you feel able at times to hold the world in the hollow of your hand. Then, if, by the crowding of so many powers into the compass of your soul takes fire, and in the conflagration of your soul, the evil of the world is lighted up and made clear, be thankful if in that hour of supreme vision life does not fiddle. Widow McFarlane, I was the Widow McFarlane, weaver of carpets for all the village. And I pity you still at the loom of life, you who are singing to the shuttle and lovingly watching the work of your hands, if you reach the day of hate, of terrible truth. For the cloth of life is woven, you know, to a pattern hidden under the loom, a pattern you never see. And you weave high-hearted, singing, you guard the threads of love and friendship for noble figures in gold and purple. And long after other eyes can see you have woven a moon-white strip of cloth, you laugh in your strength, for hope allays it with shapes of love and beauty. The loom stops short, the pattern's out, you're alone in the room, you have woven a shroud, and hate of it lays you in it. Call Hamblin, the press of the Spoon River Clarion was wrecked, and I was tarred and feathered, for publishing this on the day the anarchists were hanged in Chicago. I saw a beautiful woman with bandaged eyes standing on the steps of a marble temple. Great multitudes passed in front of her, lifting their faces to her imploringly. In her left hand she held a sod. She was brandishing the sod, sometimes striking a child, again a laborer, again a slinking woman, again a lunatic. In her right hand she held a scale. Into the scale pieces of gold were tossed by those who dodged the strokes of the sod. A man in a black gown read from a manuscript, "She is no respecter of persons." Then a youth wearing a red cap leaped to her side and snatched away the bandage. And lo, the lashes had been eaten away from the oozy eyelids, the eyeballs were seared with a milky mucus. The madness of a dying soul was written on her face, but the multitude saw why she wore the bandage. Editor Wedden, to be able to see every side of every question, to be on every side, to be everything, to be nothing long, to pervert truth, to write it for a purpose, to use great feelings and passions of the human family for base designs, for cunning ends, to wear a mask like the Greek actors, your 8-page paper, behind which you huddle, bawling through the megaphone of big type. This is I, the giant. Thereby also living the life of a sneak thief, poisoned with the anonymous words of your clandestine soul, to scratch dirt over scandal for money, and exhume it to the winds for revenge, or to sell papers, crushing reputations, or bodies, if need be, to win at any cost, save your own life. To glory in demoniac power, ditching civilization, as a paranoiac boy puts a log on the track and derails the express train. To be an editor, as I was. Then to lie here close by the river over the place where the sewage flows from the village, and the empty cans and garbage are dumped, and abortions are hidden. Eugene Common Road's slave, selling shoes and gingham, flour and bacon, overalls, clothing, all day long for 14 hours a day for 313 days for more than 20 years, saying yes and yes, sir, and thank you 1,000 times a day, and all for $50 a month, living in the stinking room in the Rattletrap commercial, and compelled to go to Sunday school, and to listen to the Rev. Abner Pete 104 times a year for more than an hour at a time, because Thomas Rhodes ran the church as well as the Star and the bank. So while I was tying my necktie that morning, I suddenly saw myself in the glass, my hair all gray, my face like a sodden pie. So I cursed and cursed. You damned old thing, you cowardly dog, you rotten papa, you Rhodes slave, till Roger Bauman thought I was having a fight with someone, and looked through the transom just in time to see me fall on the floor in a heap from a broken vein in my head. Clarence Fawcett, the sudden death of Eugene Common, put me in line to be promoted to $50 a month, and I told my wife and children that night. But it didn't come, and so I thought old Rhodes suspected me of stealing the blankets I took and sold on the side for money to pay a doctor's bill for my little girl. Then, like a bolt, old Rhodes accused me and promised me mercy for my family's sake if I confessed, and so I confessed and begged him to keep it out of the papers, and I asked the editors too. That night at home, The constable took me and every paper, except the Clarion, wrote me up as a thief because Old Rhodes was an advertiser and wanted to make an example of me. Oh, well, you know how the children cried, and how my wife pitied and hated me, and how I came to lie here. W. Lloyd Garrison, standard vegetarian, non-resistant, freethinker, in ethics a Christian, orator apt at the rhinestone rhythm of injursal, carnivorous, avenger, believer and pagan, continent, promiscuous, changeable, treacherous, vain, proud, with the pride that makes struggle a thing for laughter, with hot caught out by the worm of theatric despair, wearing the coat of indifference to hide the shame of defeat. I, child of the abolitionist idealism, a sort of brand in a birth of half and half. What other thing could happen when I defended the patriot scamps who burned the cot house, that Spoon River might have a new one, than plead them guilty? When Kinsey Keene drove through the cardboard mask of my life with a spear of light, what could I do but slink away, like the beast of myself which I raised from a whelp, to a corner and growl? The pyramid of my life was naught but a dune, barren and farmless, spoiled at last by the storm. Professor Newcomer, everyone laughed at Cole. Pritchard for buying an engine so powerful that it wrecked itself, and wrecked the grinder he ran it with. But here is a joke of cosmic size. The urge of nature that made a man evolve from his brain a spiritual life, O miracle of the world. The very same brain with which the ape and wolf get food and shelter and procreate themselves. Nature has made man do this, in a world where she gives him nothing to do after all, though the strength of his soul goes round in a futile waste of power, to gear itself to the mills of the gods, but get food and shelter and procreate himself. Ralph Rhodes, all they said was true. I wrecked my father's bank with my loans to dabble in wheat, but this was true. I was buying wheat for him as well, who couldn't margin the deal in his name because of his church relationship. And while George Reese was serving his term, I chased the will-o'-the-wisp of women and the mockery of wine in New York. It's deathly to sicken of wine and women when nothing else is left in life. But suppose your head is gray, and bowed on a table covered with acrid stubs of cigarettes and empty glasses, and a knock is heard, and you know it's the knock so long drowned out by popping cocks and the peacock screams of demiops, and you look up, and there's your theft, who waited until your head was gray, and your heart skipped beats to say to you, the game is ended. I've called for you, go out on Broadway and be run over, they'll ship you back to Spoon River. Mickey M. grew. It was just like everything else in life. Something outside myself drew me down. My own strength never failed me. Why, there was the time I earned the money with which to go away to school, and my father suddenly needed help, and I had to give him all of it. Just so it went till I ended up a man of all work in Spoon River. Thus when I got the water tower cleaned, and they hauled me up the 70 feet, I unhooked the rope from my waist, and laughingly flung my giant arms over the smooth steel lips of the top of the tower. But they slipped from the treacherous slime, and down, 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 I plunged through bellowing darkness. Rosie Roberts, I was sick, but more than that, I was mad at the crooked police and the crooked game of life. So I wrote to the chief of police at Peoria, I am here in my girlhood home in Spoon River, gradually wasting away. But come and take me, I killed the son of the merchant prince, in Madame Lou's, and the papers that said he killed himself in his home while cleaning a hunting gun, lied like the devil to hush up scandal, for the bribe of advertising. In my room, I shot him, at Madame Lou's, because he knocked me down when I said that, in spite of all the money he had, I'd see my lover that night. Oscar Hummel, I staggered on through darkness. There was a hazy sky, a few stars which I followed as best I could. It was 9 o'clock, I was trying to get home, but somehow I was lost, though really keeping the road. Then I reeled through a gate and into a yard and called at the top of my voice, "Oh, fiddler? Oh, Mr. Jones." I thought it was his house and he would show me the way home. But who should step out but A.D. Blood in his night shirt, waving a stick of wood and roaring about the cursed saloons and the criminals they made? "You drunken Oscar Hummel," he said, as I stood there weaving to and fro, taking the blows from the stick in his hand till I dropped down dead at his feet. Roscoe Percopile, she loved me. Oh, how she loved me. I never had a chance to escape from the day she first saw me. But then after we were married, I thought she might prove her mortality and let me out, or she might divorce me. But few die, none resign. Then I ran away and was gone a year on a lock, but she never complained. She said all would be well, that I would return. And I did return. I told her that while taking a row in a boat, I had been captured near Van Buren Street by pirates on Lake Michigan, and kept in chains, so I could not write her. She cried and kissed me, and said it was cruel, outrageous, inhuman. I then concluded our marriage was a divine dispensation and could not be dissolved, except by death. I was right. Mrs. Percopile, he ran away and was gone for a year. When he came home, he told me the silly story of being kidnapped by pirates on Lake Michigan and kept in chains so he could not write me. I pretended to believe it, though I knew very well what he was doing, and that he met the milliner, Mrs. Williams, now and then when she went to the city to buy goods, as she said. But a promise is a promise and marriage is marriage, and out of respect for my own character, I refused to be drawn into a divorce by the scheme of a husband who had merely grown tired of his marital vow and duty. Josiah Tompkins, I was well known and much beloved and rich, as fortunes are reckoned in Spoon River, where I had lived and worked. That was the home for me, though all my children had flown afar, which is the way of nature, all but one. The boy, who was the baby, stayed at home, to be my help in my failing years and the solace of his mother. But I grew weaker, as he grew stronger, and he quarreled with me about the business, and his wife said I was a hindrance to it, and he won his mother to see as he did, till they taught me up to be transplanted with them to her girlhood home in Missouri. And so much of my fortune was gone at last, though I made the wool just as he drew it, he profited little by it. Mrs. Kessler, Mr. Kessler, you know, was in the army, and he drew $6 a month as a pension, and stood on the corner talking politics, or sat at home reading Grant's memoirs, and I supported the family by washing, learning the secrets of all the people from their curtains, counterpanes, shirts, and skirts. For things that anew grow old at length, they're replaced with better or none at all. People are prospering or falling back, and rents and patches widen with time. No thread or needle can paste decay, and there are stains that baffle soap, and there are colors that run in spite of you, blamed though you are for spoiling a dress. Handkerchiefs, napery, have their secrets. The laundress, life, knows all about it. And I, who went to all the funerals held in Spoon River, swear I never saw a dead face without thinking it looked like something washed and ironed. Harmon Whitney out of the lights and roar of cities, drifting down like a spark in Spoon River, burnt out with the fire of drink, and broken, the paramour of a woman I took in self-contempt, but to hide a wounded pride as well. To be judged and loathed by a village of little minds, I, gifted with tongues and wisdom, sunk here to the dust of the justice caught, a picker of rags in the rubbish of spites and wrongs, I, whom fortune smiled on? I in a village, spouting to gaping yokels pages of verse, out of the lore of golden years, all raising a laugh with a flash of filthy wit when they bought the drinks to kindle my dying mind. To be judged by you, the soul of me hidden from you, with its wound gangrened by love for a wife who made the wound, with her cold white bosom, treasonous, pure and hard, relentless to the last, when the touch of her hand, at any time, might have cured me of the typhus, caught in the jungle of life where many are lost. And only to think that my soul could not react like Byron's did, in song, in something noble, but turned on itself like a tortured snake. Judge me this way, O world. Bert Kessler, I winged my bird, though he flew toward the setting sun. But just as the shot rang out, he sawed up and up through the splinters of golden light, till he turned right over. Feathers ruffled, with some of the down of him floating near, and fell like a plummet into the grass. I tramped about, potting the tangles, till I saw a splash of blood on a stump, and the quail lying close to the rotten roots. I reached my hand, but saw no briar, but something pricked and stung and numbed it. And then, in a second, I spied the rattler. The shutters wide in his yellow eyes, the head of him arched, sunk back in the rings of him, a circle of filth, the color of ashes or oak leaves bleached under layers of leaves. I stood like a stone as he shrank and uncoiled and started to crawl beneath the stump, when I fell limp in the grass. Lambert Hutchins, I have two monuments besides this granite obelisk. One, the house I built on the hill, with its spires, bay windows, and roof of slate. The other, the lakefront in Chicago, where the railroad keeps a switching yard, with whistling engines and crunching wheels, and smoke and soot thrown over the city, and the crash of cars along the boulevard. A blot like a hog pen on the harbor of a great metropolis, foul as a sty. I helped to give this heritage to generations yet unborn, with my vote in the House of Representatives, and the lure of the thing was to be at rest from the never-ending fright of need, and to give my daughters gentle breeding, and a sense of security in life. But you see, though I had the mansion house and traveling passes and local distinction, I could hear the whispers, wherever I went, and my daughters grew up with a look as if someone were about to strike them, and they married madly, helter-skelter, just to get out and have a change. And what was the whole of the business worth? Why, it wasn't worth a damn. Lillian Stewart, I was the daughter of Lambert Hutchins, born in a cottage near the grist mill, reared in the mansion there on the hill, with its spires, bay windows, and roof of slate. How proud my mother was of the mansion, how proud of father's rise in the world, and how my father loved and watched us and guarded our happiness. But I believed the house was a curse, for father's fortune was little beside it. And when my husband found he had married a girl who was really poor, he taunted me with the spires, and called the house a fraud on the world, a treacherous lure to young men, raising hopes of a dowry not to be had. And a man, while selling his vote, should get enough from the people's betrayal to wall the whole of his family in. He vexed my life till I went back home, and lived like an old maid till I died, keeping house for father. Hottens Robbins, my name used to be in the papers daily as having dined somewhere, or travelled somewhere, or rented a house in Paris, where I entertained the nobility. I was forever eating, or travelling, or taking the cure at Baden-Baden. Now I am here to do honour to Spoon River, here beside the family whence I sprang. No one cares now where I dined, or lived, or whom I entertained, or how often I took the cure at Baden-Baden. Battet and Dobbins did my widow flit about from Mackinac to Los Angeles, resting and bathing, and sitting an hour or more at the table over soup and meats and delicate sweets and coffee. I was cut down in my prime from overwork and anxiety. But I thought all along, whatever happens, I've kept my insurance up, and there's something in the bank, and a section of land in Manitoba. But just as I slipped, I had a vision in a lost delirium. I saw myself lying nailed in a box with a white lawn tie and a boutonniere, and my wife was sitting by a window someplace afar overlooking the sea. She seemed so rested, ruddy, and fat, although her hair was white. And she smiled and said to a colored waiter, "Another slice of roast beef, George. Here's a nickel for your trouble." Jacob Godby, how did you feel, you libertarians, who spent your talents rallying noble reasons around the saloon, as if liberty was not to be found anywhere except at the bar or at a table, guzzling? How did you feel, Ben Pantia, and the rest of you, who almost stoned me for a tyrant, garbed as a moralist, and as a wry-faced ascetic frowning upon Yorkshire pudding, roast beef and ale and goodwill and rosy cheer, things you never saw in a grog shop in your life? How did you feel after I was dead and gone, and your goddess, Liberty, unmasked as a strumpet, selling out the streets of Spoon River to the insolent giants who manned the saloons from afar? Did it occur to you that personal liberty is liberty of the mind, rather than of the belly? Walter Simmons, my parents thought that I would be as great as Edison or greater. For as a boy I made balloons and wondrous kites and toys with clocks and little engines with tracks to run on, and telephones of cans and thread. I played the cornet and painted pictures, modeled in clay and took the part of the villain in the Octoroon. But then at 21 I married and had to live, and so, to live, I learned the trade of making watches and kept the jewelry store on the square, thinking, not of business, but of the engine I studied the calculus to build. And all Spoon River watched and waited to see it work, but it never worked. And a few kind souls believed my genius was somehow hampered by the star. It wasn't true. The truth was this: I didn't have the brains. Tom Beatty, I was a lawyer like Harmon Whitney or Kinsey Keene or Garrison Standard, for I tried the rights of property, although by lamplight, for 30 years, in that poker room in the Opera House. And I say to you that life's a gambler head and shoulders above us all. No mayor alive can close the house. And if you lose, you can squeal as you will, you'll not get back your money. He makes the percentage hard to conquer. He stacks the cards to catch your weakness and not to meet your strength. And he gives you 70 years to play, for if you cannot win in 70, you cannot win at all. So, if you lose, get out of the room. Get out of the room when your time is up. It's mean to sit and fumble the cards, and curse your losses, leaden-eyed, whining to try and try. Roy Butler, if the learned Supreme Court of Illinois got at the secret of every case as well as it does a case of rape, it would be the greatest court in the world. A jury, of neighbors mostly, with Butch, Weldy as foreman, found me guilty in 10 minutes and 2 ballots on a case like this. Richard Bandel and I had trouble over a fence, and my wife and Mrs. Bandel quarreled as to whether Apava was a finer town than Table Grove. I awoke one morning with the love of God brimming over my heart, so I went to see Richard to settle the fence in the spirit of Jesus Christ. I knocked on the door, and his wife opened. She smiled and asked me in. I entered. She slammed the door and began to scream, "Take your hands off, you low-down varlet." Just then her husband entered. I waved my hands, choked up with words. He went for his gun, and I ran out, but neither the Supreme Court nor my wife believed a word she said. C.S.C. Foot, I wanted to go away to college, but rich Aunt Persis wouldn't help me. So I made gardens and raked the lawns and bought John Alden's books with my earnings, and toiled for the very means of life. I wanted to marry Delia Prickett, but how could I do it with what I earned? And there was Aunt Persis more than 70, who sat in a wheelchair half alive, with her throat so paralyzed, when she swallowed the soup ran out of her mouth like a duck, a gourmand yet, investing her income in mortgages, fretting all the time about her notes and rents and papers. That day I was sawing wood for her, and reading Proudhon in between. I went in the house for a drink of water, and there she sat asleep in her chair, and Proudhon lying on the table, and a bottle of chloroform on the book, she used sometimes for an aching tooth. I pawed the chloroform on a handkerchief and held it to her nose till she died. Oh, Delia, Delia, you and Proudhon steadied my hand, and the coroner said she died of heart failure. I married Delia and got the money. A joke on you, Spoon River? Edmund Pollard, I would I had thrust my hands of flesh into the disc flowers bee-infested, into the mirror-like core of fire of the light of life, the sun of delight. For what are anthers worth, or petals, or halo rays? Mockeries, shadows of the heart of the flower, the central flame all is yours, young passerby. Enter the banquet room with the thought, don't sidle in as if you were doubtful whether you're welcome. The feast is yours. Not take but a little, refusing ma with a bashful, thank you, when you're hungry. Is your soul alive? Then let it feed. Leave no balconies where you can climb, nor milk-white bosoms where you can rest, nor golden heads with pillows to share, nor wine cups while the wine is sweet, nor ecstasies of body or soul. You will die, no doubt, but die while living in depths of azure, wrapped and mated, kissing the queen bee, life. Thomas Trevelyan reading in Ovid the sorrowful story of Aeetes, son of the love of Tereus and Procne, slain for the guilty passion of Tereus for Philomela, the flesh of him served to Tereus by Procne, and the wrath of Tereus, the murderous pursuing till the gods made Philomela a nightingale, lute of the rising moon, and Procne a swallow. O livers and artists of Hellas centuries gone, sealing in little Thuribal's dreams and wisdom, incense beyond all price, forever fragrant, a breath whereof makes clear the eyes of the soul. How I inhaled its sweetness here in Spoon River. The Thurible opening when I had lived and learned how all of us kill the children of love, and all of us, knowing not what we do, devour their flesh, and all of us change to singers, although it be but once in our lives, or change, alas, to swallows, to twitter amid cold winds and falling leaves. Percival Shop observed the clasped hands. Are they hands of farewell or greeting, hands that I helped or hands that helped me? Would it not be well to carve a hand with an inverted thumb, like Elagabalus? And yonder is a broken chain, the weakest link idea perhaps, but what was it? And lambs, some lying down, others standing, as if listening to the shepherd, others bearing a cross, 1 foot lifted up, why not chisel a few shambles? And fallen columns? Carve the pedestal, please, or the foundations, let us see the cause of the fall. And compasses and mathematical instruments in irony of the under-tenant's ignorance of determinants and the calculus of variations. And anchors, for those who never sailed. And gates ajar, yes, so they were. You left them open and stray goats entered your garden. And an eye watching like one of the Arimaspi, so did you, with one eye. And angels blowing trumpets, you are heralded. It is your hon and your angel and your family's estimate. It is all very well, but for myself, I know I stirred certain vibrations in Spoon River which are my true epitaph, more lasting than stone. Hiram Skates, I tried to win the nomination for president of the county board, and I made speeches all over the county denouncing Solomon Purple, my rival, as an enemy of the people, in league with the master foes of man. Young idealists, broken warriors, hobbling on one crutch of hope, souls that staked their all on the truth, losers of worlds at heaven's bidding, flocked about me and followed my voice as the savior of the county. But Solomon won the nomination, and then I faced about and rallied my followers to his standard, and made him victor, made him king of the golden mountain with the daw which closed on my heels just as I entered, flattered by Solomon's invitation to be the county board's secretary. And out in the cold stood all my followers, young idealists, broken warriors hobbling on one crutch of hope, souls that staked their all on the truth, losers of worlds at heaven's bidding, watching the devil kick the millennium over the golden mountain. Peleg Pogue hosses and men are just alike. There was my stallion, Billy Lee, black as a cat and trim as a deer, with an eye of fire, keen to start, and he could hit the fastest speed of any racer around Spoon River. But just as you'd think he couldn't lose, with his lead of 50 yards or more, he'd rear himself and throw the rider and fall back over, tangled up, completely gone to pieces. You see, he was a perfect fraud. He couldn't win, he couldn't work, he was too light to haul or plow with, and no one wanted colts from him. And when I tried to drive him, well, he ran away and killed me. Jedith and Holly, there would be a knock at the door, and I would arise at midnight and go to the shop, where belated travellers would hear me hammering sepulchral bawds and tacking satin. And often, I wondered who would go with me to the distant land, our names the theme for talk, in the same week, for I've observed two always go together. Chase Henry was paired with Edith Conant, and Jonathan Summers with Willie Metcalf, and Editor Hamblin with Francis Turner, when he prayed to live longer than Editor Wetton, and Thomas Rhodes with Widow McFarlane, and Emily Sparks with Barry Holden, and Oscar Hummel with Davis Matlock, and Editor Wetton with Fiddler Jones, and Faith Matheny with Docker's Gustine. And I, the solemnest man in town, stepped off with Daisy Fraser. Abel Melviny, I bought every kind of machine that's known, grinders, shellers, planters, mowers, mills and rakes and plows and threshers, and all of them stood in the rain and sun, getting rusted, warped and battered, for I had no sheds to store them in, and no use for most of them. And toward the last, when I thought it over, there by my window, growing clearer about myself as my pulse slowed down, and looked at one of the mills I bought, which I didn't have the slightest need of, as things turned out, and I never ran. A fine machine, once brightly varnished and eager to do its work, now with its paint washed off. I saw myself as a good machine that life had never used. Oakes Tut my mother was for woman's rights, and my father was the rich miller at London Mills. I dreamed of the wrongs of the world and wanted to right them. When my father died, I set out to see peoples and countries in order to learn how to reform the world. I traveled through many lands. I saw the ruins of Rome, and the ruins of Athens, and the ruins of Thebes, and I sat by moonlight amid the necropolis of Memphis. There I was caught up by wings of flame, and a voice from heaven said to me, "Injustice, untruth destroyed them. Go forth, preach justice, preach truth." And I hastened back to Spoon River to say farewell to my mother before beginning my work. They all saw a strange light in my eye, and by, when I tar-iked, they discovered what had come in my mind. Then Jonathan Swift Summers challenged me to debate the subject, I taking the negative, Pontius Pilate, the greatest philosopher of the world. And he won the debate by saying at last, "Before you reform the world, Mr. Tut, please answer the question of Pontius Pilate. What is truth?" Elliot Hawkins, I looked like Abraham Lincoln. I was one of you, Spoon River, in all fellowship, but standing for the rights of property and for order. A regular church attendant, sometimes appearing in your town meetings to warn you against the evils of discontent and envy, and to denounce those who tried to destroy the Union, and to point to the peril of the Knights of Labor. My success and my example are inevitable influences in your young men, and in generations to come, in spite of attacks of newspapers like the Clarion. A regular visitor at Springfield when the legislature was in session to prevent raids upon the railroads, and the men building up the state. Trusted by them and by you, Spoon River, equally in spite of the whispers that I was a lobbyist. Moving quietly through the world, rich and courted. Dying at last, of course, but lying here under a stone with an open book carved upon it and the words of such is the kingdom of heaven. And now, you world savers, who reaped nothing in life and in death have neither stones nor epitaphs, how do you like your silence from mouths stopped with the dust of my triumphant career? Voltaire Johnson, why did you bruise me with your rough places, if you did not want me to tell you about them? And stifle me with your stupidities, if you did not want me to expose them? And nail me with the nails of cruelty, if you did not want me to pluck the nails forth and fling them in your faces? And starve me because I refused to obey you, if you did not want me to undermine your tyranny? I might have been as soul-serene as William Wordsworth except for you. But what a coward you are, Spoon River, when you drove me to stand in a magic circle by the sod of truth described, and then to whine and curse your Burns, and curse my power who stood and laughed amid ironical lightning. English Thornton here, you sons of the men who fought with Washington at Valley Forge, and whipped Black Hawk at Starved Rock, arise, do battle with the descendants of those who bought land in the Loop when it was waste sand, and sold blankets and guns to the army of Grant, and sat in legislatures in the early days, taking bribes from the railroads. Arise, do battle with the fops and bluffs, the pretenders and figurantes of the society column, and the yokel souls whose daughters marry counts, and the parasites on great ideas, and the noisy riders of great causes, and the heirs of ancient thefts. Arise, and make the city yours, and the state yours, you who are sons of the haughty yeomanry of the 40s. By God, if you do not destroy these vermin, my avenging ghost will wipe out your city and your state. Enoch Dunlap, how many times, during the 20 years I was your leader, friends of Spoon River, did you neglect the convention and caucus, and leave the burden on my hands of guarding and saving the people's cause? Sometimes because you were ill, or your grandmother was ill, or you drank too much and fell asleep, or else you said, "He is our leader, all will be well, he fights for us, we have nothing to do but follow." But oh, how you cursed me when I fell, and cursed me, saying I had betrayed you, in leaving the caucus room for a moment when the people's enemies, there assembled, waited and watched for a chance to destroy the sacred rights of the people. You common rabble? I left the caucus to go to the urinal. Ida Fricky, nothing in life is alien to you. I was a penniless girl from Summum who stepped from the morning train in Spoon River. All the houses stood before me with closed doors and drawn shades. Elle was barred out. I had no place apart in any of them. And I walked past the old McNeely mansion, a castle of stone mid-walks and gardens with workmen about the place on guard and the county and state upholding it for its lordly owner, full of pride. I was so hungry I had a vision. I saw a giant pair of sisses dip from the sky, like the beam of a dredge, and cut the house in two like a curtain. But at the commercial, I saw a man who winked at me as I asked for work. It was Wash McNeely's son. He proved the link in the chain of title to half my ownership of the mansion through a breach of promise suit the sisses. So, you see, the house, from the day I was born, was only waiting for me. Seth Compton when I died, the circulating library, which I built up for Spoon River and managed for the good of inquiring minds, was sold at auction on the public square, as if to destroy the last vestige of my memory and influence. For those of you who could not see the virtue of knowing Volney's ruins as well as Butler's Analogy and Faust as well as Evangeline, were really the power in the village, and often you asked me, what is the use of knowing the evil in the world? I am out of your way now. Spoon River, choose your own good and call it good. For I could never make you see that no one knows what is good who knows not what is evil, and no one knows what is true who knows not what is false. Felix Schmidt, it was only a little house of 2 rooms, almost like a child's playhouse, with scarce 5 acres of ground around it, and I had so many children to feed and school and clothe, and a wife who was sick from bearing children. One day lawyer Whitney came along and proved to me that Christian Dalman, who owned 3,000 acres of land, had bought the 80 that adjoined me in 1871 for $11, at a sale for taxes, while my father lay in his mortal illness. So the quarrel arose, and I went to law. But when we came to the proof, a survey of the land showed clear as day that Dalman's tax deed covered my ground and my little house of 2 rooms. It served me right for stirring him up. I lost my case and lost my place. I left the cot room and went to work as Christian Dalman's tenant. Schroeder the fisherman, I sat on the bank above Bernadotte and dropped crumbs in the water, just to see the minnows bump each other, until the strongest got the prize. Or I went to my little pasture, where the peaceful swine were asleep in the wallow, or nosing each other lovingly, and emptied a basket of yellow corn, and watched them push and squeal and bite, and trample each other to get the corn. And I saw how Christian Dalman's farm, of more than 3,000 acres, swallowed the patch of Felix Schmidt, as a base will swallow a minnow. And I say if there's anything in man, spirit, or conscience, or breath of God that makes him different from fishes or hogs, I'd like to see it work. Richard Bone, when I first came to Spoon River, I did not know whether what they told me was true or false. They would bring me the epitaph and stand around the shop while I worked and say, he was so kind, he was so wonderful, she was the sweetest woman, he was a consistent Christian. And I chiseled for them whatever they wished, all in ignorance of the truth. But later, as I lived among the people here, I knew how near to the life were the epitaphs that were ordered for them as they died. But still, I chiseled whatever they paid me to chisel, and made myself party to the false chronicles of the stones, even as the historian does who writes without knowing the truth, or because he is influenced to hide it. Sailors dement it was moonlight, and the earth sparkled with new-fallen frost. It was midnight, and not a soul abroad. Out of the chimney of the cot-house, a greyhound of smoke leapt and chased the northwest wind. I carried a ladder to the landing of the stairs and leaned it against the frame of the trapdoor in the ceiling of the portico, and I crawled under the roof and amid the rafters and flung among the seasoned timbers a lighted handful of oil-soaked waste. Then I came down and slunk away. In a little while the fire bell rang, clang, 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 and the Spoon River Ladder Company came with a dozen buckets and began to pour water on the glorious bonfire, growing hotter, higher, and brighter, till the walls fell in, and the limestone columns where Lincoln stood crashed like trees when the woodman fells them. When I came back from Joliet, there was a new cot house with a dome. For I was punished like all who destroy the past for the sake of the future. Dillard Sisman, the buzzards wheel slowly in wide circles, in a sky faintly hazed as from dust from the road. And a wind sweeps through the pasture where I lie beating the grass into long waves. My kite is above the wind, though now and then it wobbles, like a man shaking his shoulders, and the tail streams out momentarily, then sinks to rest. And the buzzards wheel and wheel, sweeping the zenith with wide circles above my kite. And the hills sleep. And a farmhouse, white as snow, peeps from green trees, far away. And I watch my kite, for the thin moon will kindle herself ere long, then she will swing like a pendulum dial to the tail of my kite. A spurt of flame like a water dragon dazzles my eyes. I am shaken as a banner. Jonathan Houghton, there is the caw of a crow, and the hesitant song of a thrush. There is the tinkle of a cowbell far away, and the voice of a ploughman on Shipley's Hill. The forest beyond the orchard is still with midsummer stillness, and along the road a wagon chuckles, loaded with corn, going to Atterbury. And an old man sits under a tree asleep, and an old woman crosses the road, coming from the orchard with a bucket of blackberries. And a boy lies in the grass near the feet of the old man, and looks up at the sailing clouds, and longs and longs and longs for what? He knows not, for manhood, for life, for the unknown world. Then 30 years passed, and the boy returned worn out by life and found the orchard vanished, and the forest gone, and the house made over, and the roadway filled with dust from automobiles. And himself desiring the hill? E. C. Culbertson, is it true, Spoon River, that in the hallway of the new cot house, there is a tablet of bronze containing the embossed faces of Editor Weddon and Thomas Rhodes? And is it true that my successful labors in the county board, without which not one stone would have been placed on another, and the contributions out of my own pocket to build the temple, are but memories among the people, gradually fading away, and soon to descend with them to this oblivion where I lie? In truth, I can so believe, for it is a law of the kingdom of heaven that whoso enters the vineyard at the 11th hour shall receive a full day's pay. And it is a law of the kingdom of this world that those who first oppose a good work seize it and make it their own, when the cornerstone is laid, and memorial tablets are erected. Shack Dye, the white men played all sorts of jokes on me. They took big fish off my hook and put little ones on, while I was away getting a stringer, and made me believe I hadn't seen aright the fish I had caught. When Burr Robin's circus came to town, they got the ringmaster to let a tame leopard into the ring, and made me believe I was whipping a wild beast like Samson when I, for an offer of $50, dragged him out to his cage. One time I entered my blacksmith shop and shook as I saw some horseshoes crawling across the floor, as if alive. Walter Simmons had put a magnet under the barrel of water. Yet every one of you white men, was fooled about fish and about leopards too, and you didn't know any more than the horseshoes did what moved you about Spoon River. Hildrop Tubbs, I made 2 fights for the people. First I left my party, bearing the gonfalon of independence for reform, and was defeated. Next I used my rebel strength to capture the standard of my old party, and I captured it, but I was defeated. Discredited and discarded, misanthropical, I turned to the solace of gold, and I used my remnant of power to fasten myself like a saprophyte upon the putrescent carcass of Thomas Rhodes' bankrupt bank, as a signee of the fund. Everyone now turned from me. My hair grew white, my purple lusts grew gray, tobacco and whiskey lost their savor, and for years death ignored me as he does a hog. Henry tripped the bank broke, and I lost my savings. I was sick of the tiresome game in Spoon River, and I made up my mind to run away and leave my place in life and my family. But just as the midnight train pulled in, quick off the steps jumped Cully Green and Martin Vise, and began to fight to settle their ancient rivalry, striking each other with fists that sounded like the blows of knotted clubs. Now, it seemed to me that Cully was winning, when his bloody face broke into a grin of sickly cowardice, leaning on Martin and whining out, "We're good friends, Mott, you know that I'm your friend." But a terrible punch from Martin knocked him around and into a heap. And then they arrested me as a witness, and I lost my train and stayed in Spoon River to wage my battle of life to the end. Oh, Cully Green, you were my savior, you, so ashamed and drooped for years, loitering listless about the streets, and tying rags round your festering soul, who failed to fight it out. Granville Calhoun, I wanted to be county judge one more term, so as to round out a service of 30 years. But my friends left me and joined my enemies, and they elected a new man. Then a spirit of revenge seized me, and I infected my 4 sons with it, and I brooded upon retaliation, until the great physician, nature, smote me through with paralysis to give my soul and body a rest. Did my sons get power and money? Did they serve the people or yoke them to till and harvest fields of self? For how could they ever forget my face at my bedroom window, sitting helpless amid my golden cages of singing canaries, looking at the old cot house? Henry C. Calhoun, I reached the highest place in Spoon River, but through what bitterness of spirit? The face of my father, sitting speechless, childlike, watching his canaries, and looking at the cot house window of the county judge's room, and his admonitions to me to seek my own in life, and punish Spoon River to avenge the wrong the people did him, filled me with furious energy to seek for wealth and seek for power. But what did he do but send me along the path that leads to the Grove of the Furies? I followed the path, and I tell you this. On the way to the grove you'll pass the Fates, shadow-eyed, bent over their weaving. Stop for a moment, and if you see the thread of revenge leap out of the shuttle, then quickly snatch from Atropos the shears and cut it, lest your sons, and the children of them and their children, wear the envenomed robe. Alfred Moi, why was I not devoured by self-contempt, and rotted down by indifference and impotent revolt like Indignation Jones? Why, with all of my errant steps, did I miss the fate of Willard Fluke? And why, though I stood at Burchard's bar, as a sort of decoy for the house to the boys to buy the drinks, did the curse of drink fall on me like rain that runs off, leaving the soul of me dry and clean? And why did I never kill a man like Jack Maguire? But instead, I mounted a little in life, and I owe it all to a book I read. But why did I go to Mason City, where I chanced to see the book in a window, with its garish cover luring my eye? And why did my soul respond to the book, as I read it over and over? Perry Zoll, my thanks, friends of the County Scientific Association, for this modest boulder, and its little tablet of bronze. Twice I tried to join your honored body, and was rejected, and when my little brochure on the intelligence of plants began to attract attention, you almost voted me in. After that I grew beyond the need of you and your recognition. Yet I do not reject your memorial stone, seeing that I should, in so doing, deprive you of honor to yourselves. Dippold the optician, what do you see now? Globes of red, yellow, purple. Just a moment? And now? My father and mother and sisters. Yes, and now, knights at arms, beautiful women, kind faces. Try this. A field of grain, a city. Very good. And now? A young woman with angels bending over her. A heavier lens, and now? Many women with bright eyes and open lips. Try this. Just a goblet on a table. Oh, I see. Try this lens. Just an open space. I see nothing in particular. Well, now, pine trees, a lake, a summer sky. That's better. And now, a book. Read a page for me, I can't. My eyes are carried beyond the page. Try this lens. Depths of air. Excellent. And now? Light, just light, making everything below it a toy world. Very well, we'll make the glasses accordingly. Magrity Graham, tell me, was Altgeld elected governor? For when the returns began to come in and Cleveland was sweeping the East, it was too much for you, poor old heart, who had striven for democracy in the long, long years of defeat. And like a watch that is wan, I felt you growing slower until you stopped. Tell me, was Altgeld elected, and what did he do? Did they bring his head on a platter to a dancer, or did he triumph for the people? For when I saw him and took his hand, the childlike blueness of his eyes moved me to tears, and there was an air of eternity about him, like the cold, clear light that rests at dawn on the hills. Archibald Higbee, I loathed you, Spoon River. I tried to rise above you. I was ashamed of you. I despised you as the place of my nativity. And there in Rome, among the artists speaking Italian, speaking French, I seemed to myself at times to be free of every trace of my origin. I seemed to be reaching the heights of art and to breathe the air that the masters breathed and to see the world with their eyes. But still they'd pass my work and say, "What are you driving at, my friend?" Sometimes the face looks like Apollo's, at others it has a trace of Lincoln's. There was no culture, you know, in Spoon River, and I burned with shame and held my peace. And what could I do? All covered over and weighted down with Western soil, except aspire, and pray for another birth in the world, with all of Spoon River rooted out of my soul? Tom Merritt, at first I suspected something. She acted so calm and absent-minded. And one day I heard the back door shut as I entered the front, and I saw him slink back of the smokehouse into the lot and run across the field, and I meant to kill him on sight. But that day, walking near Forth Bridge without a stick or a stone at hand, all of a sudden I saw him standing scared to death, holding his rabbits, and all I could say was, "Don't," as he aimed and fired at my heart. Mrs. Merritt silent before the jury, returning no word to the judge when he asked me if I had aught to say against the sentence, only shaking my head. What could I say to people who thought that a woman of 35 was at fault when her lover of 19 killed her husband, even though she had said to him over and over, "Go away, Elma, go far away. I have maddened your brain with the gift of my body. You will do some terrible thing." And just as I feared, he killed my husband, with which I had nothing to do, before God, silent for 30 years in prison, and the iron gates of Joliet swung, as the grey and silent trustees carried me out in a coffin. Elma Carr, what but the love of God could have softened and made forgiving the people of Spoon River toward me, who wronged the bed of Thomas Merritt and murdered him beside? Oh, loving hearts that took me in again when I returned from 14 years in prison. Oh, helping hands that in the church received me, and heard with tears my penitent confession, who took the sacrament of bread and wine. Repent, ye living ones, and rest with Jesus. Elizabeth, child is dust of my dust, and dust with my dust. O child who died as you entered the world, dead with my death, not knowing breath, though you tried so hard, with a heart that beat when you lived with me, and stopped when you left me for life. It is well, my child, for you never traveled the long, long way that begins with school days, when little fingers blur under the tears that fall on the crooked letters, and the earliest wound, when a little mate leaves you alone for another, and sickness and the face of fear by the bed, the death of a father or mother, or shame for them, or poverty, the maiden sorrow of school days ended, and eyeless nature that makes you drink from the cup of love, though you know it's poisoned. To whom would your flower face have been lifted, botanist, weakling? Cry of what blood to yours? Pure or foul, for it makes no matter, it's blood that calls to our blood. And then your children, oh, what might they be, and what your sorrow? Child, child, death is better than life. Edith, cannot we stand about this place, we the memories, and shade our eyes because we dread to read? June 17, 1884, aged 21 years and 3 days. And all things are changed, and we the memories, stand here for ourselves alone, for no eye mocks us, or would know why we are here. Your husband is dead, your sister lives far away, your father is bent with age. He has forgotten you, he scarcely leaves the house any more. No one remembers your exquisite face, your lyric voice, how you sang, even on the morning you were stricken, with piercing sweetness, with thrilling sorrow, before the advent of the child which died with you. It is all forgotten, save by us, the memories, who are forgotten by the world. All is changed, save the river and the hill, even they are changed. Only the burning sun and the quiet stars are the same, and we the memories, stand here in awe, our eyes closed with the weariness of tears, in immeasurable weariness. Charles Webster, the pine woods on the hill, and the farmhouse miles away, showed clear as though behind a lens under a sky of peacock blue, but a blanket of cloud by afternoon muffled the earth. And you walked the road and the clover field, where the only sound was the cricket's liquid tremolo. Then the sun went down between great drifts of distant storms, for a rising wind swept clean the sky and blew the flames of the unprotected stars, and swayed the russet moon, hanging between the rim of the hill and the twinkling boughs of the apple orchard. You walked the shore in thought, where the throats of the waves were like whippoorwills singing beneath the water and crying to the wash of the wind in the cedar trees, till you stood, too full for tears, by the cot, and looking up saw Jupiter, tipping the spire of the giant pine, and looking down saw my vacant chair, rocked by the wind on the lonely porch. Be brave, beloved. Father Malloy, you are over there, Father Malloy, where holy ground is, and the cross marks every grave, not here with us on the hill, us of wavering faith and clouded vision and drifting hope and unforgiven sins. You were so human, Father Malloy, taking a friendly gloss sometimes with us, siding with us who would rescue Spoon River from the coldness and the dreariness of village morality. You were like a traveler who brings a little box of sand from the wastes about the pyramids and makes them real and Egypt real. You were a part of and related to a great past, and yet you were so close to many of us. You believed in the joy of life. You did not seem to be ashamed of the flesh. You faced life as it is and as it changes. Some of us almost came to you, Father Malloy, seeing how your church had divined the hot and provided for it, through Peter the Flame, Peter the Rock, Ami Green, not a youth with hoary head and haggard eye, but an old man with a smooth skin and black hair. I had the face of a boy as long as I lived, and for years a soul that was stiff and bent, in a world which saw me just as a jest, to be hailed familiarly when it chose, and loaded up as a man when it chose, being neither man nor boy. In truth, it was soul as well as body which never matured, and I say to you that the much-sought prize of eternal youth is just arrested growth. Calvin Campbell, ye who are kicking against fate, tell me how it is that on this hillside running down to the river, which fronts the sun and the south wind, this plant draws from the air and soil poison and becomes poison ivy, and this plant draws from the same air and soil sweet elixirs and colors and becomes arbutus, and both flourish? You may blame Spoon River for what it is, but whom do you blame for the will in you that feeds itself and makes you duckweed, jimpson, dandelion or mullein, and which can never use any soil or air so as to make you jessamine or wisteria? Henry Layton, whoever thou art who passest by, know that my father was gentle, and my mother was violent, while I was born the whole of such hostile halves, not intermixed and fused, but each distinct, feebly soldered together. Some of you saw me as gentle, some as violent, some as both. But neither half of me wrought my ruin. It was the falling asunder of halves, never a part of each other, that left me a lifeless soul. Holland Sewall, you never understood, O unknown one, why it was I repaid your devoted friendship and delicate ministrations first with diminished thanks, afterward by gradually withdrawing my presence from you, so that I might not be compelled to thank you, and then with silence which followed upon our final separation. You had cured my diseased soul, but to cure it you saw my disease, you knew my secret, and that is why I fled from you. For though when our bodies rise from pain, we kiss forever the watchful hands that gave us wormwood, while we shudder for thinking of the wormwood, a soul that's cured is a different matter, for there we'd blot from memory the soft-toned words, the searching eyes, and stand forever oblivious, not so much of the sorrow itself as of the hand that healed it. Ippolit Konovalov, I was a gunsmith in Odessa. One night the police broke in the room where a group of us were reading Spencer, and seized our books and arrested us. But I escaped and came to New York and thence to Chicago, and then to Spoon River, where I could study my cant in peace and eke out a living repairing guns. Look at my molds, my architectonics, one for a barrel, one for a hammer, and others for other parts of a gun. Well, now suppose no gunsmith living had anything else but duplicate molds of these I show you. Well, all guns would be just alike, with a hammer to hit the cap and a barrel to carry the shot, all acting alike for themselves, and all acting against each other alike. And there would be your world of guns, which nothing could ever free from itself except a molder with different molds to mold the metal over. Henry Phipps, I was the Sunday school superintendent, the dummy president of the wagon works and the canning factory, acting for Thomas Rhodes and the banking clique. My son the cashier of the bank, wedded to Rhodes' daughter, my weekdays spent in making money, my Sundays at church and in prayer. In everything a cog in the wheel of things as they are, of money, master and man, made white with the paint of the Christian creed. And then, the bank collapsed. I stood and looked at the wrecked machine. The wheels with blowholes stopped with putty and painted, the rotten bolts, the broken rods, and only the hopper for souls fit to be used again in a new devourer of life, when newspapers, judges, and money magicians build over again. I was stripped to the bone, but I lay in the rock of ages, seeing now through the game, no longer a dupe, and knowing, the upright shall dwell in the land, but the years of the wicked shall be shortened. Then suddenly, Dr. Mayers discovered a cancer in my liver. I was not, after all, the particular care of God. Why, even thus standing on a peak above the mists through which I had climbed, and ready for larger life in the world, eternal forces moved me on with a push. Harry Wilmans, I was just turned 21, and Henry Phipps, the Sunday school superintendent, made a speech in Bindle's Opera House. The honor of the flag must be upheld, he said, whether it be assailed by a barbarous tribe of Tagalogs or the greatest power in Europe. And we cheered and cheered the speech and the flag he waved as he spoke. And I went to the war in spite of my father, and followed the flag till I saw it raised by our camp in a rice field near Manila, and all of us cheered and cheered it. But there were flies and poisonous things, and there was the deadly water, and the cruel heat, and the sickening, putrid food, and the smell of the trench just back of the tents where the soldiers went to empty themselves. And there were the haws who followed us, full of syphilis, and beastly acts between ourselves or alone, with bullying, hatred, degradation among us, and days of loathing and nights of fear to the hour of the charge through the steaming swamp, following the flag, till I fell with a scream, shot through the guts. Now there's a flag over me in Spoon River, a flag, John Wasino, the dew-wet grass of the meadow in North Carolina through which Rebecca followed me wailing, one child in her arms, and three that ran along wailing, lengthening out the farewell to me off to the war with the British, and then the long, hard years down to the day of Yorktown. And then my search for Rebecca, finding her at last in Virginia, 2 children dead in the meanwhile. We went by oxen to Tennessee, thence after years to Illinois, at last to Spoon River. We cut the buffalo grass, we felled the forests, we built the schoolhouses, built the bridges, leveled the roads and tilled the fields alone with poverty, scourges, death. If Harry Wilmans, who fought the Filipinos, is to have a flag on his grave, take it from mine. Many soldiers the idea danced before us as a flag. The sound of martial music, the thrill of carrying a gun, advancement in the world on coming home. A glint of glory, wrath for foes, a dream of duty to country or to God. But these were things in ourselves, shining before us. They were not the power behind us, which was the almighty hand of life, like fire at earth-center making mountains or pent-up waters that cut them through. Do you remember the iron band the blacksmith, Shack Dye, welded around the oak on Bennett's lawn, from which to swing a hammock that daughter Janet might repose in, reading on summer afternoons, and that the growing tree at last sundered the iron band? But not a cell in all the tree knew aught save that it thrilled with life, nor cared because the hammock fell in the dust with Milton's poems. Godwin James Harry Wilmans, you who fell in a swamp near Manila, following the flag, you were not wounded by the greatness of a dream, or destroyed by ineffectual work, or driven to madness by satanic snags. You were not torn by aching nerves, nor did you carry great wounds to your old age. You did not starve, for the government fed you. You did not suffer yet cry, forward to an army which you led against a foe with mocking smiles, sharper than bayonets. You were not smitten down by invisible bombs. You were not rejected by those for whom you were defeated. You did not eat the savorless bread which a poor alchemy had made from ideals. You went to Manila, Harry Wilmans, while I enlisted in the bedraggled army of bright-eyed, divine youths who surged forward, who were driven back and fell, sick, broken, crying, shorn of faith, following the flag of the kingdom of heaven. You and I, Harry Wilmans, have fallen in our several ways, not knowing good from bad, defeat from victory, nor what face it is that smiles behind the demoniac mask. Lyman King, you may think, passerby, that fate is a pitfall outside of yourself, around which you may walk by the use of foresight and wisdom. Thus you believe, viewing the lives of other men, as one who in godlike fashion bends over an anthill, seeing how their difficulties could be avoided. But pass on into life. In time you shall see fate approach you in the shape of your own image in the mirror, or you shall sit alone by your own hearth, and suddenly the chair by you shall hold a guest, and you shall know that guest, and read the authentic message of his eyes. Caroline Bronson, with our hearts like drifting suns, had we but walked, as often before, the April fields till starlight silkened over with viewless gauze the darkness under the cliff, our trysting place in the wood, where the brook turns. Had we but passed from wooing like notes of music that run together, into winning, in the inspired improvisation of love. But to put back of us as a canticle ended the rapt enchantment of the flesh, in which our souls swooned down, where time was not, nor space, nor ourselves, annihilated in love, to leave these behind for a room with lamps, and to stand with our secret mocking itself, and hiding itself amid flowers and mandolins, stared at by all between salad and coffee. And to see him tremble, and feel myself prescient, as one who signs a bond, not flaming with gifts and pledges heaped with rosy hands over his brow. And then, O night, deliberate, unlovely, with all of our wooing blotted out by the winning, in a chosen room in an hour that was known to all. Next day he sat so listless, almost cold, so strangely changed, wondering why I wept, till a kind of sick despair and voluptuous madness seized us to make the pact of death. A stalk of the earth sphere, frail as starlight, waiting to be drawn once again into creation's stream, but next time to be given birth gazed at by Raphael and St. Francis sometimes as they pass. For I am their little brother, to be known clearly face to face through a cycle of birth hereafter run. You may know the seed and the soil, you may feel the cold rain fall, but only the earth sphere, only heaven knows the secret of the seed in the nuptial chamber under the soil. Throw me into the stream again, give me another trial, save me, Shelley? And Rutledge out of me unworthy and unknown the vibrations of deathless music, with malice toward none, with charity for all. Out of me the forgiveness of millions toward millions, and the beneficent face of a nation shining with justice and truth. I am Anne Rutledge who sleep beneath these weeds, beloved in life of Abraham Lincoln, wedded to him, not through union, but through separation. Bloom forever, O Republic, from the dust of my bosom. Hamlet Micure, in a lingering fever, many visions come to you. I was in the little house again with its great yard of clover running down to the bod fence, shadowed by the oak tree, where we children had our swing. Yet the little house was a manor hall set in a lawn, and by the lawn was the sea. I was in the room where little Paul strangled from diphtheria, but yet it was not this room. It was a sunny veranda enclosed with mullioned windows, and in a chair sat a man in a dark cloak, with a face like Euripides. He had come to visit me, or I had gone to visit him. I could not tell. We could hear the beat of the sea, the clover nodded under a summer wind, and little Paul came with clover blossoms to the window and smiled. Then I said, "What is divine despair, Alfred? Have you read Tears, Idle Tears?" he asked. "Yes, but you do not there express divine despair." "My poor friend," he answered, "that was why the despair was divine. Mabel Usborne, your red blossoms amid green leaves are drooping, beautiful geranium, but you do not ask for water, you cannot speak, you do not need to speak. Everyone knows that you are dying of thirst, yet they do not bring water. They pass on, saying, 'The geranium wants water.' And I, who had happiness to share and longed to share your happiness, I who loved you, Spoon River, and craved your love, withered before your eyes, Spoon River, thirsting, voiceless from chasteness of soul to ask you for love, you who knew and saw me perish before you, like this geranium which someone has planted over me and left to die." William H. Herned in there by the window in the old house perched on the bluff, overlooking miles of valley, my days of labor closed, sitting out life's decline. Day by day did I look in my memory, as one who gazes in an enchantress crystal globe, and I saw the figures of the past, as if in a pageant glassed by a shining dream, move through the incredible sphere of time. And I saw a man arise from the soil like a fabled giant and throw himself over a deathless destiny, master of great armies, head of the republic, bringing together into a dithyramb of recreative song the epic hopes of a people. At the same time Vulcan of sovereign fires, where imperishable shields and swords were beaten out from spirits tempered in heaven. Look in the crystal. See how he hastens on to the place where his path comes up to the path of a child of Plutarch and Shakespeare. O Lincoln, actor indeed, playing well your part, and Booth, who strode in a mimic play within the play, often and often I saw you, as the cawing crows winged their way to the wood over my housetop at solemn sunsets, there by my window, alone. Rebecca Wasson, spring and summer, fall and winter and spring after each other drifting, past my window drifting, and I lay so many years watching them drift and counting the years till a terror came in my heart at times, with the feeling that I had become eternal. At last my 100th year was reached, and still I lay hearing the tick of the clock, and the low of cattle, and the scream of a jay flying through falling leaves. Day after day alone, in a room of the house of a daughter-in-law stricken with age and gray. And by night, all looking out of the window by day my thought ran back, it seemed, through infinite time to North Carolina and all my girlhood days, and John, my John, away to the war with the British, and all the children, the deaths, and all the sorrows, and that stretch of years like a prairie in Illinois, through which great figures passed like hurrying horsemen, Washington, Jefferson, Jackson, Webster, Clay. O beautiful young republic for whom my John and I gave all of our strength and love. And oh my John, why, when I lay so helpless in bed for years, praying for you to come, was your coming delayed? Seeing that with a cry of rapture, like that I uttered when you found me in old Virginia after the war, I cried when I beheld you there by the bed, as the sun stood low in the west growing smaller and fainter in the light of your face. Rutherford McDowell, they brought me ambrotypes of the old pioneers to enlarge, and sometimes one sat for me, someone who was in being when giant hands from the womb of the world tore the republic. What was it in their eyes? For I could never fathom that mystical pathos of drooped eyelids, and the serene sorrow of their eyes. It was like a pool of water, amid oak trees at the edge of a forest, where the leaves fall, as you hear the crow of a cock from a far-off farmhouse, seen near the hills where the third generation lives, and the strong men and the strong women are gone and forgotten. And these grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the pioneers. Truly did my camera record their faces, too, with so much of the old strength gone, and the old faith gone, and the old mastery of life gone, and the old courage gone, which labors and loves and suffers and sings under the sun. Hannah Armstrong, I wrote him a letter asking him for old time's sake to discharge my sick boy from the army, but maybe he couldn't read it. Then I went to town and had James Garber, who wrote beautifully, write him a letter, but maybe that was lost in the mails. So I traveled all the way to Washington. I was more than an hour finding the White House, and when I found it they turned me away, hiding their smiles. Then I thought, oh well, he ain't the same as when I boarded him and he and my husband worked together, and all of us called him Abe, there in Menard. As a last attempt, I turned to a god and said, "Please say it's old Aunt Hannah Armstrong from Illinois, come to see him about her sick boy in the army." Well, just in a moment they let me in. And when he saw me, he broke in a laugh and dropped his business as president and wrote in his own hand Doug's discharge, talking the while of the early days and telling stories. Lucinda Matlock, I went to the dances at Chandlerville and played Snap Out at Winchester. One time we changed partners, driving home in the moonlight of middle June, and then I found Davis. We were married and lived together for 70 years, enjoying, working, raising the 12 children, 8 of whom we lost ere I had reached the age of 60. I spun, I wove, I kept the house, I nursed the sick, I made the garden, and for holiday rambled over the fields where sang the larks, and by Spoon River gathering many a shell, and many a flower and medicinal weed, shouting to the wooded hills, singing to the green valleys. At 96 I had lived enough, that is all, and passed to a sweet repose. What is this I hear of sorrow and weariness, anger, discontent and drooping hopes? Degenerate sons and daughters, life is too strong for you. It takes life to love life. Davis Matlock suppose it is nothing but the hive, that there are drones and workers and queens, and nothing but storing honey, material things as well as culture and wisdom. For the next generation, this generation never living, except as it swarms in the sunlight of youth, strengthening its wings on what has been gathered, and tasting, on the way to the hive from the clover field, the delicate spoil. Suppose all this, and suppose the truth, that the nature of man is greater than nature's need in the hive, and you must bear the burden of life, as well as the urge from your spirit's excess. Well, I say to live it out like a god sure of immortal life, though you are in doubt, is the way to live it. If that doesn't make God proud of you, then God is nothing but gravitation, or sleep is the golden goal. Herman Altman did I follow truth wherever she led, and stand against the whole world for a cause, and uphold the weak against the strong. If I did, I would be remembered among men as I was known in life among the people, and as I was hated and loved on earth. Therefore, build no monument to me, and carve no bust for me, lest, though I become not a demigod, the reality of my soul be lost, so that thieves and liars, who were my enemies and destroyed me, and the children of thieves and liars, may claim me and affirm before my bust that they stood with me in the days of my defeat. Build me no monument, lest my memory be perverted to the uses of lying and oppression. My lovers and their children must not be dispossessed of me. I would be the untarnished possession forever of those for whom I lived. Jenny M. grew not, where the stairway turns in the dock, a hooded figure, shriveled under a flowing cloak. Not yellow eyes in the room at night, staring out from a surface of cobweb gray, and not the flap of a condor wing, when the roar of life in your ears begins as a sound heard never before. But on a sunny afternoon, by a country road, where purple ragweeds bloom along a straggling fence, and the field is gleaned, and the air is still, to see against the sunlight something black, like a blot with an iris rim. That is the sign to eyes of second sight. And that I saw? Columbus, Cheney, this weeping willow. Why do you not plant a few for the millions of children not yet born, as well as for us? Are they not non-existent, or cells asleep without mind? Or do they come to earth, their birth rupturing the memory of previous being? Answer, the field of unexplored intuition is yours. But in any case, why not plant willows for them, as well as for us? Wallace Ferguson there at Geneva, where Mt. Blanc floated above the wine-hued lake like a cloud, when a breeze was blown out of an empty sky of blue, and the roaring Rhone hurried under the bridge through chasms of rock. And the music along the cafes was part of the splendor of dancing water under a torrent of light. And the purer part of the genius of Jean Rousseau was the silent music of all we saw or heard. There at Geneva, I say, was the rapture less because I could not link myself with the eye of Yah, when 20 years before I wandered about Spoon River, nor remember what I was nor what I felt. We live in the hour all free of the hours gone by. Therefore, O soul, if you lose yourself in death, and wake in some Geneva by some Mt. Blanc, what do you care if you know not yourself as the you who lived and loved in a little corner of earth known as Spoon River ages and ages vanished? Marie Bateson, you observe the carven hand with the index finger pointing heavenward. That is the direction, no doubt. But how shall one follow it? It is well to abstain from murder and lust, to forgive, do good to others, worship God without graven images. But these are external means after all by which you chiefly do good to yourself. The inner kernel is freedom, it is light, purity. I can no more find the goal or lose it, according to your vision. Tennessee Claflin Shope, I was the laughing stock of the village, chiefly of the people of good sense, as they call themselves, Also of the learned, like Rev. Pete, who read Greek the same as English. For instead of talking free trade, or preaching some form of baptism, instead of believing in the efficacy of walking cracks, picking up pins the right way, seeing the new moon over the right shoulder, or curing rheumatism with blue glass, I asserted the sovereignty of my own soul. Before Mary Baker G. Eddy even got started with what she called science, I had mastered the Bhagavad Gita and cured my soul. Before Mary began to cure bodies with souls. Peace to all worlds. Plymouth Rock Joe, why are you running so fast hither and thither chasing midges or butterflies? Some of you are standing solemnly scratching for grubs. Some of you are waiting for corn to be scattered. This is life, is it? Cock-a-doodle-doo? Very well, Thomas Rhodes, you are cock of the walk, no doubt. But here comes Elliot Hawkins, gluck, 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 attracting political followers. Qua, why so poetical, Minerva? This grey morning, Kitty, qua. For shame, Lucius Atherton, the raucous squawk you evoked from the throat of Ana Clute will be taken up later by Mrs. Benjamin Pantier as a cry of votes for women. Ka duk. What inspiration has come to you, Margaret full o' slack? And why does your gooseberry eye flit so liquidly, Tennessee Claflin Shope? Are you trying to fathom the esotericism of an egg? Your voice is very metallic this morning. Hortense Robbins, almost like a guinea hen's. Qua, that was a guttural sigh, Isaiah Beethoven. Did you see the shadow of the hawk, or did you step upon the drumsticks which the cook threw out this morning? Be chivalric, heroic, or aspiring, metaphysical, religious, or rebellious, you shall never get out of the barnyard except by way of over the fence mixed with potato peelings and such into the trough. Emmanuel Ehrenhot, I began with Sir William Hamilton's lectures, then studied Dugald Stewart, and then John Locke on the Understanding, and then Descartes, Fichte and Schelling, Kant and then Schopenhauer. Books I borrowed from old Judge Summers. All read with rapturous industry, hoping it was reserved to me to grasp the tale of the ultimate secret and drag it out of its hole. My soul flew up 10,000 miles, and only the moon looked a little bigger. Then I fell back, how glad of the earth, all through the soul of William Jones, who showed me a letter of John Muir. Samuel Gardner, I who kept the greenhouse, lover of trees and flowers, oft in life saw this umbrageous elm, measuring its generous branches with my eye, and listened to its rejoicing leaves lovingly patting each other with sweet Aeolian whispers. And well, they might, for the roots had grown so wide and deep that the soil of the hill could not withhold aught of its virtue, enriched by rain, and warmed by the sun, but yielded it all to the thrifty roots, through which it was drawn and whirled to the trunk, and thence to the branches, and into the leaves, wherefrom the breeze took life and sang. Now I, an undetenant of the earth, can see that the branches of a tree spread no wider than its roots. And how shall the soul of a man be larger than the life he has lived? Dow Crit Samuel is forever talking of his elm, but I did not need to die to learn about roots, I, who dug all the ditches about Spoon River. Look at my elm. Sprung from as good a seed as his, sown at the same time, it is dying at the top, not from lack of life, nor fungus, nor destroying insect as the sexton thinks. Look, Samuel, where the roots have struck rock and can no further spread. And all the while the top of the tree is tiring itself out and dying, trying to grow. William Jones, once in a while a curious weed unknown to me, needing a name from my books, once in a while a letter from yeomans. Out of the mussel shells gathered along the shaw, sometimes a pearl with a glint like meadow rue, then betimes a letter from Tyndall in England, stamped with the stamp of Spoon River. I, lover of nature, beloved for my love of her, held such converse afar with the great who knew her better than I. Oh, there is neither lesser nor greater, save as we make her greater and win from her keener delight. With shells from the river cover me. I lived in wonder, worshipping earth and heaven. I have passed on the march eternal of endless life. William Good to all in the village I seemed, no doubt, to go this way and that way, aimlessly. But here by the river you can see at twilight the soft-winged bats fly zigzag here and there. They must fly so to catch their food. And if you have ever lost your way at night, in the deep wood near Miller's Ford, and dodged this way and now that, wherever the light of the Milky Way shone through, trying to find the path, you should understand I sought the way with earnest zeal, and all my wanderings were wanderings in the quest. J. Milton Miles, whenever the Presbyterian bell was rung by itself, I knew it as the Presbyterian bell. But when its sound was mingled with the sound of the Methodist, the Christian, the Baptist, and the Congregational, I could no longer distinguish it, nor anyone from the others, or either of them. And as many voices called to me in life, marvel, not that I could not tell the true from the false, nor even, at last, the voice that I should have known. Faith Matheny, at first you will know not what they mean, and you may never know, and we may never tell you. These sudden flashes in your soul, like lambent lightning on snowy clouds at midnight when the moon is full. They come in solitude, or perhaps you sit with your friend, and all at once a silence falls on speech, and his eyes without a flick aglow at you. You two have seen the secret together, he sees it in you, and you in him. And there you sit thrilling lest the mystery stand before you and strike you dead with a splendor like the sun's. Be brave, all souls who have such visions. As your body's alive as mine is dead, you're catching a little whiff of the ether reserved for God himself. Schofield Hurley God, ask me not to record your wonders. I admit the stars and the suns and the countless worlds, but I have measured their distances and weighed them, and discovered their substances. I have devised wings for the air, and keels for water, and hosses of iron for the earth. I have lengthened the vision you gave me 1,000,000 times, and the hearing you gave me 1,000,000 times. I have leaped over space with speech, and taken fire for light out of the air. I have built great cities and bawed through the hills, and bridged majestic waters. I have written the Iliad and Hamlet, and I have explored your mysteries, and searched for you without ceasing, and found you again after losing you in hours of weariness. And I ask you, how would you like to create a sun, and the next day have the worms slipping in and out between your fingers? Willie Metcalf, I was Willie Metcalf. They used to call me Dr. Mayers because, they said, I looked like him. And he was my father, according to Jack Maguire. I lived in the livery stable, sleeping on the floor side by side with Roger Bauman's bulldog, or sometimes in a stall. I could crawl between the legs of the wildest horses without getting kicked. We knew each other. On spring days, I tramped through the country to get the feeling, which I sometimes lost, that I was not a separate thing from the earth. I used to lose myself, as if in sleep, by lying with eyes half open in the woods. Sometimes I tar-iked with animals, even toads and snakes, anything that had an eye to look into. Once I saw a stone in the sunshine trying to turn into jelly. In April days in this cemetery, the dead people gathered all about me, and grew still, like a congregation in silent prayer. I never knew whether I was a pot of the earth with flowers growing in me, or whether I walked. Now I know. Willie Pennington, they called me the weakling, the simpleton, for my brothers were strong and beautiful, while I, the lost child of parents who had aged, inherited only their residue of power. But they, my brothers, were eaten up in the fury of the flesh, which I had not, made pulp in the activity of the senses, which I had not, hardened by the growth of the lusts, which I had not, though making names and riches for themselves. Then I, the weak one, the simpleton, resting in a little corner of life, saw a vision, and through me many saw the vision, not knowing it was through me. Thus a tree sprang from me, a mustard seed. The village atheist, ye young debaters over the doctrine of the soul's immortality, I who lie here was the village atheist, talkative, contentious, versed in the arguments of the infidels. But through a long sickness coughing myself to death, I read the Upanishads and the poetry of Jesus. And they lighted a torch of hope and intuition and desire, which the shadow, leading me swiftly through the caverns of darkness, could not extinguish. Listen to me, ye who live in the senses and think through the senses only. Immortality is not a gift, immortality is an achievement, and only those who strive mightily shall possess it. John Ballard, in the lust of my strength I cursed God, but he paid no attention to me. I might as well have cursed the stars. In my lost sickness I was in agony, but I was resolute, and I cursed God for my suffering. Still he paid no attention to me, he left me alone, as he had always done. I might as well have cursed the Presbyterian steeple. Then, as I grew weaker, a terror came over me. Perhaps I had alienated God by cursing him. One day Lydia Humphrey brought me a bouquet, and it occurred to me to try to make friends with God, so I tried to make friends with him, but I might as well have tried to make friends with the bouquet. Now, I was very close to the secret, for I really could make friends with the bouquet by holding close to me the love in me for the bouquet, and so I was creeping upon the secret. But Julian Scott toward the lost, the truth of others was untruth to me, the justice of others injustice to me, their reasons for death, reasons with me for life, their reasons for life, reasons with me for death. I would have killed those they saved, and saved those they killed. And I saw how a god, if brought to earth, must act out what he saw and thought, and could not live in this world of men and act among them side by side without continual clashes. The dusts for crawling, heavens for flying. Wherefore, O soul, whose wings are grown, soar upward to the sun. Alfonso Churchill, they laughed at me as Prof. Moon, as a boy in Spoon River, born with the thirst of knowing about the stars. They jeered when I spoke of the Luna Mountains and the thrilling heat and cold, and the ebon valleys by silver peaks, and speak a quadrillions of miles away, and the littleness of man. But now that my grave is honored, friends, let it not be because I taught the lore of the stars in Knox College, but rather for this, that through the stars I preached the greatness of man, who is none the less a part of the scheme of things for the distance of Spica, or the spiral nebulae, nor any the less a part of the question of what the drama means. Zilpha Marsh at 4 o'clock in late October, I sat alone in the country schoolhouse back from the road mid-stricken fields, and an eddy of wind blew leaves on the pane, and crooned in the flue of the cannon stove, with its open door blurring the shadows with the spectral glow of a dying fire. In an idle mood, I was running the planchette. All at once my wrist grew limp, and my hand moved rapidly over the board, till the name of Charles Gaitow was spelled, who threatened to materialize before me. I rose and fled from the room bareheaded into the dusk, afraid of my gift, and after that the spirits swarmed Chaucer, Caesar, Poe and Marlowe, Cleopatra and Mrs. Surratt, wherever I went, with messages. Mere trifling twaddle, Spoon River agreed. You talk nonsense to children, don't you? And suppose I see what you never saw and never heard of and have no word for, I must talk nonsense when you ask me what it is I see. James Garber, do you remember, passerby, the path I wore across the lot where now stands the Opera House, hasting with swift feet to work through many years? Take its meaning to heart. You too may walk, after the hills at Miller's Ford seem no longer far away, long after you see them near at hand, beyond 4 miles of meadow, and after woman's love is silent saying no more. Elle will save you. And after the faces of friends and kindred become as faded photographs, pitifully silent, sad for the look which means, we cannot help you. And after you no longer reproach mankind with being in league against your soul's uplifted hands, themselves compelled at midnight and at noon to watch with steadfast eye their destinies. After you have these understandings, think of me and of my path, who walked therein and knew that neither man nor woman, neither toil, nor duty, gold nor power can ease the longing of the soul, the loneliness of the soul. Lydia Humphrey back and forth, to and from the church, with my Bible under my arm till I was gray and old, unwedded, alone in the world, finding brothers and sisters in the congregation, and children in the church. I know they laughed and thought me queer. I knew of the eagle souls that flew high in the sunlight, above the spire of the church, and laughed at the church, disdaining me, not seeing me. But if the high air was sweet to them, sweet was the church to me. It was the vision of the poets democratized. Leroy Goldman, what will you do when you come to die, if all your life long you have rejected Jesus, and know as you lie there, he is not your friend? Over and over I said, I, the revivalist. Ah, yes, but there are friends and friends. And blessed are you, say I, who know all now, you who have lost, ere you pass, a father or mother, or old grandfather or mother, some beautiful soul that lived life strongly, and knew you all through, and loved you ever, who would not fail to speak for you, and give God an intimate view of your soul, as only one of your flesh could do it. That is the hand your hand will reach for, to lead you along the corridor to the cot where you are a stranger. Gustav Richter, after a long day of work in my hothouse's sleep was sweet, but if you sleep on your left side your dreams may be abruptly ended. I was among my flowers where someone seemed to be raising them on trial, as if afterwhile to be transplanted to a larger garden of freer air. And I was disembodied vision amid a light, as it were the sun had floated in and touched the roof of glass like a toy balloon and softly bursted, and etherealized in golden air. And all was silence, except the splendor was immanent with thought as clear as a speaking voice. And I, as thought, could hear a presence think as he walked between the boxes pinching off leaves, looking for bugs and noting values, with an eye that saw it all. Homer, oh yes, Pericles good. Caesar Borgia, what shall be done with it? Dante, too much manure, perhaps. Napoleon, leave him a while as yet. Shelley, moss soil. Shakespeare, needs spraying? Clouds, eh? Allah, well, did you ever see an alligator come up to the air from the mud, staring blindly under the full glare of noon? Have you seen the stabled horses at night tremble, and start back at the sight of a lantern? Have you ever walked in darkness when an unknown door was opened before you and you stood, it seemed, in the light of 1,000 candles of delicate wax? Have you walked with the wind in your ears and the sunlight about you, and found it suddenly shine with an inner splendor? Out of the mud many times, before many daws of light through many fields of splendor, where around your steps a soundless glory scatters like new-fallen snow, will you go through earth, O strong of soul, and through unnumbered heavens to the final flame? Captain Orlando Killian O., You young radicals and dreamers, you dauntless fledglings who pass by my headstone, mock not its record of my captaincy in the army and my faith in God. They are not denials of each other. Go by reverently, and read with sober care how a great people, riding with defiant shouts the centaur of revolution, spurred and whipped to frenzy, shook with terror, seeing the mist of the sea over the precipice they were nearing, and fell from his back in precipitate awe to celebrate the feast of the Supreme Being. Moved by the same sense of vast reality of life and death, and burdened as they were with the fate of a race, how was I, a little blasphemer, caught in the drift of a nation's unloosened flood, to remain a blasphemer and a captain in the army? Jeremy Carlyle passerby, sin beyond any sin is the sin of blindness of souls to other souls. And joy beyond any joy is the joy of having the good in you seen, and seeing the good at the miraculous moment. Here I confess to a lofty scorn and an acrid skepticism. But do you remember the liquid that Pennywit poured on tintypes, making them blue with a mist like hickory smoke? Then how the picture began to clear till the face came forth like life? So you appeared to me, neglected ones and enemies too, as I went along with my face growing clearer to you as yours grew clearer to me. We were ready then to walk together and sing in chorus and chant the dawn of life that is holy life. Joseph Dixon, who carved this shattered hop on my stone? I died to you, no doubt. But how many hops and pianos wired I and tightened and disentangled for you, making them sweet again, with tuning fork or without? Oh well, a hop leaps out of the ear of a man, you say? But whence the ear that orders the length of the strings to a magic of numbers flying, before your thought through a door that closes against your breathless wonder? Is there no ear round the ear of a man, that it senses through strings and columns of air the soul of sound? I thrill as I call it a tuning fork that catches the waves of mingled music and light from afar, the antennae of thought that listens through utmost space. Surely the concord that ruled my spirit is proof of an ear that tuned me, able to tune me over and use me again if I am worthy to use. Judson stood on a mountain top above the clouds that streamed like a sea below me. I said that peak is the thought of Buddha, and that one is the prayer of Jesus, and this one is the dream of Plato, and that one there the song of Dante, and this is Kant, and this is Newton, and this is Milton, and this is Shakespeare, and this the hope of the Mother Church, and this, why all these peaks are poems, poems and prayers that pierce the clouds. And I said, what does God do with mountains that rise almost to heaven? Russell Kincaid. In the last spring I ever knew, in those lost days, I sat in the forsaken orchard, where beyond fields of greenery shimmered the hills at Miller's Ford, just to muse on the apple tree with its ruined trunk and blasted branches, and shoots of green whose delicate blossoms were sprinkled over the skeleton tangle, never to grow in fruit. And there was I with my spirit girded by the flesh half dead, the senses numb, yet thinking of youth and the earth in youth. Such phantom blossoms palely shining over the lifeless boughs of time. O earth that leaves us ere heaven takes us? Had I been only a tree to shiver with dreams of spring and a leafy youth, then I had fallen in the cyclone, which swept me out of the soul's suspense, where it's neither earth nor heaven. Aaron Hatfield, better than granite, Spoon River, is the memory picture you keep of me standing before the pioneer men and women there at Concord Church on Communion Day, speaking in broken voice of the peasant youth of Galilee who went to the city and was killed by bankers and lawyers, my voice mingling with the June wind that blew over wheat fields from Atterbury, while the white stones in the burying ground around the church shimmered in the summer sun. And there, though my own memories were too great to bear, were you, O pioneers, with bowed heads breathing forth your sorrow for the sons killed in battle, and the daughters and little children who vanished in life's morning, or at the intolerable hour of noon. But in those moments of tragic silence, when the wine and bread were passed, came the reconciliation for us the ploughmen and the hewers of wood, us the peasants, brothers of the peasant of Galilee, to us came the comforter and the consolation of tongues of flame. Isaiah Beethoven, they told me I had 3 months to live, so I crept to Bernadotte, and sat by the mill for hours and hours where the gathered waters deeply moving seemed not to move. O world, that's you? You are but a widened place in the river where life looks down and we rejoice for her mirrored in us, and so we dream and turn away, but when again we look for the face, behold the lowlands and blasted cottonwood trees where we empty into the larger stream. But here by the mill, the castled clouds mocked themselves in the dizzy water, and over its agate floor, at night, the flame of the moon ran under my eyes, amid a forest stillness broken by a flute in a hut on the hill. At last, when I came to lie in bed weak and in pain, with the dreams about me, the soul of the river had entered my soul, and the gathered power of my soul was moving so swiftly, it seemed to be at rest under cities of cloud, and under spheres of silver and changing worlds, until I saw a flash of trumpets above the battlements over time. Elijah Browning, I was among multitudes of children dancing at the foot of a mountain. A breeze blew out of the east and swept them as leaves, driving some up the slopes. All was changed. Here were flying lights and mystic moons and dream music. A cloud fell upon us. When it lifted, all was changed. I was now amid multitudes who were wrangling. Then a figure in shimmering gold, and one with a trumpet, and one with a scepter stood before me. They mocked me and danced a rigadoon and vanished. All was changed again. Out of a bower of poppies a woman bared her breasts and lifted her open mouth to mine. I kissed her. The taste of her lips was like salt. She left blood on my lips. I fell exhausted. I arose and ascended higher, but a mist as from an iceberg clouded my steps. I was cold and in pain. Then the sun streamed on me again, and I saw the mists below me hiding all below them. And I, bent over my staff, knew myself silhouetted against the snow. And above me was the soundless air, pierced by a cone of ice, over which hung a solitary star. A shudder of ecstasy, a shudder of fear ran through me, but I could not return to the slopes, nay, I wished not to return. For the spent waves of the symphony of freedom lapped the ethereal cliffs about me. Therefore I climbed to the pinnacle. I flung away my staff. I touched that star with my outstretched hand. I vanished utterly. For the mountain delivers to infinite truth whosoever touches the star. Webster Faw, do you remember, O Delphic Apollo, the sunset hour by the river, when Mickey Emgrew cried, "There's a ghost," and I, "It's Delphic Apollo," and the son of the banker derided us, saying, "It's light by the flags at the water's edge, you half-witted fools." And from thence, as the wearisome years rolled on, long after poor Mickey fell down in the water tower to his death, down, down, through bellowing darkness, I carried the vision which perished with him like a rocket which falls and quenches its light in earth, and hid it for fear of the son of the banker, calling on Plutus to save me. Avenged were you for the shame of a fearful heart, who left me alone till I saw you again in an hour when I seemed to be turned to a tree with trunk and branches growing indurate, turning to stone, yet burgeoning in laurel leaves, in hosts of lambent laurel, quivering, fluttering, shrinking, fighting the numbness creeping into their veins from the dying trunk and branches. 'Tis vain, O youth, to fly the call of Apollo. Fling yourselves in the fire, die with a song of spring, if die you must in the spring. For none shall look on the face of Apollo and live, and choose you must twixt death in the flame and death after years of sorrow, rooted fast in the earth, feeling the gristly hand, not so much in the trunk as in the terrible numbness creeping up to the laurel leaves that never cease to flourish until you fall. O leaves of me too sere for coronal wreaths, and fit alone for urns of memory, treasured, perhaps, as themes for hearts heroic, fearless singers and livers, Delphic Apollo. The hill where are Elma, Herman, Bert, Tom and Charlie, the weak of will, the strong of arm, the clown, the boozer, the fighter, all a-sleeping on the hill. One passed in a fever, one was burned in a mine, one was killed in a brawl, one died in a jail, one fell from a bridge toiling for children and wife, all a-sleeping, sleeping on the hill. Where are Ella, Kate, Mag, Lizzie and Edith, the tender heart, the simple soul, the loud, the proud, the happy one? All a-sleeping on the hill. One died in shameful childbirth, one of a thwarted love, one at the hands of a brute in a brothel, one of a broken pride, in the search for heart's desire. One after life in far-away London and Paris was brought to her little space by Ella and Kate and Mag, all a-sleeping, sleeping on the hill. Where are Uncle Isaac and Aunt Emily, and old Townie Kincaid and Savine Houghton, and Major Walker who had talked with venerable men of the Revolution? All a-sleeping on the hill. They brought them dead sons from the war, and daughters whom life had crushed, and their children fatherless, crying, all a-sleeping, sleeping on the hill. Where is old Fiddler Jones who played with life all his 90 years, braving the sleet with bared breast, drinking, rioting, thinking neither of wife nor kin, nor gold, nor love, nor heaven? Lo, he babbles of the fish fries of long ago, of the hoss races of long ago at Clary's Grove, of what Abe Lincoln said one time at Springfield.